He's lining it up. 5 seconds left. NIU up 16-14. 62-yarder. Snap, hold, Jeter's kick. It's blocked! It's blocked! It's blocked! Picked up by NIU! Picked up by NIU! The Huskies have done it! The Huskies with the biggest upset in NIU history! They come to South Bend, Indiana, and they knock off the number 5 team in the country. NIU 16, Notre Dame 14. The football gods were shining down on NIU.
This is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
Nico is going to waltz into the end zone. Touchdown, Tennessee, 31 yards.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Pitch to Gordon, running left to the 10, Gordon to the 5, into the end zone, touchdown, Oklahoma State.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
7 yards deep, lets it go to the sideline, Big Six! Tommy Hill, the short run to the house.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
This will be a 54-yard field goal attempt to give them the lead and probably the win. Conradi, kick on the way, and he got it.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go on this Tuesday afternoon. Ari Temkin, Big 12 Radio Network, joins us today. Ricky Thompson, who was a part of that 1974 Southwest Conference Championship team at Baylor that they celebrate 50 years of it this week. The luncheon Friday, the game against Air Force, the Academy on Saturday. And then also Troy Calhoun, who had a chance to visit with us earlier today, about an hour ago, the Air Force Academy football coach, who was just absolutely phenomenal. John McClain today will also have pod number 4 in the Big 12 review, preview, summary. That will be at about 4:25. Craig's off the radar, Paul's top 5. That's what we have today, and a lot more to get to. All right, let's start with this. Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina, great to have you. First week of the NFL season's up. Craig will have off the radar on some numbers, etc., at 4:45. Jeff Grimes, in 2021, he could have gotten the job pretty much anywhere. He was happy where he was. And then, of course, 22 and 23 happened. He's at Kansas. And there's some grumbling after the loss over the weekend to Illinois. And there's the note that, I got to do a better job of getting the ball to Neal and Hinshaw. in the crunch. Excuse me, in the crunch. And he's right. That's Hishaw in the crunch. And that's easy, but that's what he said. At least maybe that makes a few people happy.
Yeah, people were not happy about the short passing game with Kansas at all. Jalen Daniels didn't play well. It's one of the worst games I've ever seen him play for sure. And, had turnovers and just wasn't clicking. And then the running game wasn't, he wasn't calling the right plays at that time. He's got two running backs that, look, he would have died to have in his last year at Baylor. Absolutely killed to have in Devin Neal and Daniel Hishaw. And, when it mattered in a close game, it wasn't like they were behind by 2 scores. They were behind by a field goal, less than a field goal in the game. They could have run the ball more, and they didn't. Now, granted, Illinois was doing a really good job of stopping them early, but running backs, especially big ones like Neal and Hishaw, get better and more effective the more they run into the defensive players and the guys get tired of tackling them. They have to do that more, and that's got to be their identity because those are really the most dependable players on their offense.
Yeah, Hishaw is a really good running back, as is Devin Neal, and they were a big part of what you were expecting from Kansas's offense this year. I just think it's 2 games in, and you're trying to get used to a new offensive coordinator, and Andy Kotelnicki was really good at what he did. Jeff Grimes is a different flavor, and I thought going into this thing it was going to be a little bit of an adjustment process just in terms of expectations and what you have been used to seeing. And we saw Jeff Grimes do some really good things. We also saw times where that offense could bog down and get a little bit stubborn. And I know he's got a lot that he wants to prove this year after the way the things at Baylor ended. But it's a little bit early, but I understand where some of the frustrations coming on. So when your strengths coming out where partially your running backs, your running backs need to be more of the load, especially when Jalen Daniels is not playing like some superstar quarterback. He's been fine. He's been okay, but he is not like a guy who's getting the Heisman murmurs early in the season. He's far from that. So you can't expect him to just come in and be a miracle worker. You got to get those other guys involved. And I think it'll just take some time, but Kansas will be okay eventually. But that was certainly a game on Saturday where it was a little bit of a reality check with all the preseason talk and the expectations. I thought that game going to Illinois was going to be, a little tricky, and sure enough, it was. So I think this is a typical reaction to losing your first game, is to start to look for the mistakes and what's going on. And certainly that offense should be a lot better given what you have.
Well, again, KU with the history, what they did to turn it around with Lance Leipold. They have UNLV coming up this week at home and then on the road to open up their Big 12 conference play against West Virginia in Morgantown. So they have the next couple of weeks. UNLV is a team that can kind of give some people some problems with Barry Odom and what they have done so far this year.
Well, they've already beat a Big 12 team.
Absolutely.
They beat Houston.
Yep,
so
they did.
That's something they could easily go and do again if Kansas isn't careful and doesn't have themselves ready for what is a very good Rebels team and one of the probably better G5 teams, I guess you'd say right now, just based on what we've seen at this point. Tulane's obviously going to throw their hat in the ring, and Texas State could have a huge win this Thursday. But, yeah, UNLV is also one of those teams making a little bit of noise so far this season.
Deion Sanders, okay, we brought this up. Craig, you brought this up. We kind of went back to it. We discussed the game and the loss in Lincoln and some of that the disappointment there. They got mauled on the offense and defensive lines. And then, as we said, Craig brought this up. There was a report yesterday from someone that has a lot of social media clout about the fact that Dion would not let Colorado play their immediate fight song and go see all that when Shedeur scored a touchdown. There is a quick blip of a song that Shedeur likes, and they do that for every player. But Dion, yesterday I saw him respond to one of the reports by saying, bruh, which is like, what are you doing? Here's another one. I agree with him on this completely. That would the band not play the fight song after Shedeur scores? That's idiotic. We got to start having some kind of accountability for this. I agree. I mean, he has to take accountability, and he's getting hammered now. Of course, they've lost, 9 of 10 or 8 or 9 or whatever. Sometimes they bring it on themselves, but just making things up when a school like that already has a lot of stories and things circling the program. Craig, you mentioned it. Dion today mentioned accountability. We don't see that very much.
I mean, here's the deal. If you don't believe him to begin with, you're not going to believe this statement. Like, immediately I saw somebody who I know was running with the story yesterday say, well, if that was true, then why not just say no directly? So, like, it doesn't matter what he says. People already have their narratives. And look, he's provided plenty of ammunition. I'm not saying he's without any blame when it comes to the portrayal in the media, but I do feel like he does get treated a little bit differently than a lot of other head coaches do. So there's a little bit of both going on here. But as far as that story goes, I don't know, other than it was basically debunked right away that story was not exactly what it appeared to be. But that didn't stop basically dozens of media members from picking it up and running with it and talking about it on their shows and their podcasts. So it was treated like it was real. Surprise, surprise, this quote, when I saw it, had like 8 retweets versus, I don't know, like the 800 the other one got.
Yep.
So that's social media for you in a nutshell. And he's not going to be trusted. Like, they're not, it's not a situation where it's like, okay, yeah, that was a mistake. We don't live in that world where we just go, you know what, I don't like Dion or agree with him, but yeah, that was probably a mistake. We don't need to do that. He's right. He would, no, it's they're just going to, oh, he's lying. Like, that's all it, like, oh, well, he's just lying. He's not telling the truth. So it's pointless to even discuss it, really, because people have already made up their minds about everything in regards to that team and to him and to Shedeur and to everybody else. And like I said, I'm not some staunch defender, but I did think it was kind of BS for everybody to just run willy-nilly with a story that wasn't totally confirmed and turned out to not really be totally truthful. But the damage was done, and so it doesn't really matter what the actual truth is. And look, for all I know, maybe I'm the dummy, and he really did order that. But based on what we've seen, I don't think that's the case. And based on what we've seen, there's plenty of other things that are real and legitimate, that are truthful, that you can pick apart from this Colorado football team. You don't need some made-up stuff.
What about the accountability of him not answering questions in the press conference?
I mean,
that's his prerogative.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not saying he's without blame in any degree of anything.
I'm on record. No matter, I don't care what. I like the guy. I like him. I think that there are some things that they bring on themselves. He himself too. But I do like him. But one of the things, take accountability, Dion. Answer the press conference questions that you're asked. So, Paul.
Yeah, Look, I'm with Craig. Like, and this is true for any walk of life. Like, focus on the legitimate things and not the silly things you can't confirm, or when they are confirmed, then, the person who tweeted that was like, yeah, but I was almost right. Like, well, no, I mean, you weren't. Like,
that's media now, though,
yeah,
man. It doesn't even matter if you're right. Yeah. Like, honestly, I mean, half the time.
Yeah. So focus on what's real and what the actual issues are, and not the window dressing. And what's real and the actual issues are that Dion has to address is he fundamentally doing the right things to build a football team that can win in the Power Four? Right now, it doesn't look like that. So what does he have to change so it does that? Because they don't look much different than they did from last year. Clearly, he has some recruiting chops because he's Deion Sanders, but is he recruiting the right guys for what he wants to do? Or is he relying on the fact that he's Deion Sanders and he can just decide at any given moment, hey, I want that guy, and maybe get him, as opposed to the coaches like Kirby Smart, who have their staffs doing the work all the way down the level of everything that they can do. So those are the real issues. Whether he plays, 10 seconds of Shedeur's or the kicker's fight song or a rap song before they play the fight song is like such a minor thing.
I can't. The last time I heard about a fight song story is when Texas was playing there. There's the big controversy of the slave background to like that was the last time I remember hearing a controversy about a fight song. Was Texas fight, right? And that, yeah. And so that, like, it's not something we talk about all that often. Like, we hear it all the time, but we don't talk about it. So this is, to me, just, it's just one of those things of the attraction of Dion, and the reporting on him is different than it is for a lot of other guys. He's not perfect. I just think that there's a floor on there's a bedroom on the 3rd floor that's already on fire. You don't need to go pour gas. Like, they've already lit it themselves, and they may or may not try to put it out, because if you're to believe some opinions, and I'll ask you guys this in a second, like, this is already rolling towards the end anyways at the end of this year. So you don't really need to go and like come running up with another canister of gas. It's already lit. Like it's already spreading. And it's just a matter of like, can they win enough games to like, make it reasonable enough to survive this thing? But you lose to Colorado State and like, my gosh, like the whole third floor is going to be on fire. You lose to Baylor. Like, I mean, this thing could burn down in a hurry because it's so combustible as it already is. But I know that's not how it works. And so there's a scrutiny. He asked for that scrutiny, and it's up to him to, as a football coach at a major university, win football games. Bottom line, fight song, schmite song, this or that. Like, he's just got to find a way to win at this point. That's the only way you're going to shut up a lot of this stuff. And I had a question, but go ahead.
No, go ask your question.
Do y'all think this is his last year? I mean, are you already on that boat?
I'm one of those that usually I kind of fall for that, but I'm not sold on that.
I'm not sold on it. I think Dion has to make a decision, though, if he's going to continue going forward. And it's a decision that his former boss, Jerry Jones, has not made. Do you want to win your way, or do you want to win the way that works? Because if you want to win your way, maybe there's a path to that, but clearly it can take years until you kind of happen into it. Or you can find, I'm going to win my style, but I'm not just going to be drilled into what what I think I should be doing. Like I've got to adapt. I've got to bend. I've got to change some things that I'm doing. And look, if you're Deion Sanders and you can't just go into any town USA and recruit a high school player.
You're not trying to.
You're not trying to, but you feel it's because you start you can't just do it because of the fame aspect of it. All right, fine. Then get somebody on your staff who is really good at it. And then you get on, like, when you get to their house, you're like, all right, put me up on the TV and let's talk to this kid and be like, hey, look, it's different and all that. Do you look philosophically and go, hey, this high school offense I'm running doesn't work in the Pac-12, the Big 12, or any 12. We need to adapt that.
Yeah. Someone said, did even the media bring this up? Are they the ones that reported it? It doesn't matter. You have to do your due diligence and also check on things. Just because Barstool or whoever pops something up, and I'm not blaming them, but I did see them with it, doesn't mean it's true. I've been burned about 3 times in the Twitterverse by the Ian Rappaport fake account. 3 times. And you've kind of like, hey, be careful with that one. And so I've deleted it. But I think that if you see something and you go, oh, and it's just because it's on social media doesn't mean it's true no matter who has reported it.
Well, the type of situation you're talking about is parody. Like, that's intentionally just joking and making light of it and being a fake Ian Rappaport or fake whoever. And that's parody. That's pretty well known what that is. This is like actual reporting and saying that this happened. So look, the days of like traditional reporting are pretty much null and void because of social media. And so typically you would have like vetted this and asked sources or whatever. And I don't know what this person behind this story did, but it turns out like we pretty quickly like saw holes poked in it.
Yep.
So you would have done your due diligence and, made sure it was all correct. Nowadays, I don't think that many people do that outside of like maybe the major corporation. And I don't even think they do it all the time anymore. Like, I watch some of these news channels and I'm like, this is just as much tabloid stuff as whatever. So yeah, there was a way it was done once upon a time, but I think that's few and far between, especially on social media. So nobody's worried about being wrong, because the whole point of a lot of that stuff is just, I don't care if it's true. I just want people to retweet it and give me impressions and follow me. Like, that's all people are worried about. They're not worried about whether it's true or not. They're worried about whether it gets the attention that they want.
You mean like a lot of Realignment Twitter handles?
I mean, it can be like that. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, pick a topic outside of college football. There's plenty of people that do that with celebrity stuff, or they do it with, any number of things. And I mean, anime fans or, whatever. Boy, like the K-pop fans are like, the Taylor Swift fans are some of the nastiest people out there.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not exclusive to college football, but it's just, it's a lot of, you gotta really know what's what and what's not, and a lot of it's not what you think it is.
No question. All right, now coming up Saturday, Ricky Thompson joins us at 4, Baylor sideline analyst. Baylor will be hosting Air Force. Air Force, the academies always have amazing helmets and uniforms, but Baylor will go to the Black Ops look, and they're asking fans to do a blackout, so to speak. And a lot of times the connection, the communication between the fan base and the athletic administration can be a little bit interesting. But I love this look. I love this look. There will be a flyover. There will be a 100-yard or whatever American flag. Air Force is in town. There will be some military presence. I think this is great. We'll have Troy Calhoun at 5 or a little bit after 5. But I do love this look for Baylor.
I do too. I do want to make one single mention that I was thinking about when you were talking. I think it is very interesting, though, that the Colorado media is starting to turn a corner. Like with that story, like Sean Keeler was like the outlier, but now it feels like after these first couple of weeks, like everybody else is sort of like suddenly getting real fed up real quick. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've seen that. That's an
interesting change in the wind that I think is just worth noting. But as far as this goes, they're not calling it a blackout, but it's a blackout.
Yeah.
Like, hey, this is not called a blackout. This is our Black Ops game or, whatever theme. But these are anthracite jerseys, even though they're all black, basically. And this is not a blackout game, but we want the fans to wear all black. So it's just the verbiage is not exactly the same as it was, but it's what they're wanting. And I think the uniforms look really sharp. They're cool alternates. We've never seen them before, obviously, because they just got them this year. And they have not worn all black in ages. And fans have been clamoring for that. And fans have been clamoring for a blackout. And fans have been clamoring for the promotions department to do more and more. And it's like, okay, well, they've got the salute to service military theme. They've got the black uniforms. It's a night game. There's a flyover. They've got like the Miracle on the Brazos guys that are going to be there. So you want promotions, you got them this weekend. And I hope to see that place jam-packed and full and fired up because they're doing the first blackout in forever. And this is what people have been clamoring for. But as you said, like who the hell knows with this crowd, because I know in Ames, Iowa, it'd be jam-packed elbow to elbow. I know in Lubbock, Texas, it would be too. In Waco, I don't know. I don't know. I would think it would be, but I can't say that for sure.
Paxton, and we'll move on. Paxton, Baylor fans care about the strangest things. And at times, you're right. They get into certain parts to get into weeds on stuff that sometimes I just don't understand. It's their team. It's their school, whoever. They can feel the way they want. It's also going to be, again, on Saturday afternoon, and it could be about 100 degrees. But that's not, you know what? You said Lubbock, Manhattan, Ames, they will be blacked out. They would shut it off. They would be blacked out throughout from goal line to goal line.
Yeah, that's the thing that been a problem with Baylor fans. I will say, Paxton, how quickly we forget. Things are going great for Texas now, so they've forgotten about all the little ancillary things that they were complaining about at DKR for years and years and years. And now that they're good, it's like, winning helps. I'd like to see that, but whatever. I'm happy.
Well, they did change the corner, turn the corner a couple of years ago. They used to. It used to be like sometimes you're walking into a mausoleum. The crowd.
But that's Del Conte, man. He's done a great job. All that and everything else with that university's athletic department, and they are operating on full cylinders. But yeah, there was a time not that long ago when there was very apathetic crowds. I mean, they still turned out larger than most because their fan base is so gigantic, but it wasn't like it was. Like when they showed up at Michigan and they had like what seemed like 50,000 people there.
Yep.
I mean, it wasn't like
loud
that
and proud,
all the time. No. They're riding a high right now for sure. But yeah, to your point, like there is a lot of stuff. Like if it wasn't black uniforms, then there would be something else that was wrong that needs to fix and blah, blah, blah. But regardless.
I love that they call it Black Ops.
Yeah, I mean, it's the salute to service game. Yeah. So it's a way of saying blackout without saying blackout and having the tribute to the military and having the flyover and all that. So yeah, that's smart. And they're playing Air Force. Like there's the whole tie-in is the fact that they're playing Air Force. But while all that's cool, like I don't know what the reaction is going to be with this crowd. And I just think that's unfortunate because you shouldn't really be questioning that. But because you've been so wonky for a year and a half, and because this is not the biggest fan base, it is more of a question mark than it is for others.
The 1974 Southwest Conference Championship team will be honored. That might help a little bit, you hope. And, of course, we'll have Ricky Thompson on to discuss that here momentarily. Craig sent this to me yesterday evening. Arizona will debut their Red Cats script helmet in a non-conference game like Baylor, Utah was non-con. The game against Kansas State, which is a hellacious game, Arizona, K-State in Manhattan, a non-conference game, does not count. It counts as a win or a loss, but not a part of the Big 12 standings.
I'd normally hold this for off the radar, and I didn't realize that I'd taken that out of my bag once I sent that. So I was like, all right, well, I'll just find something else, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I always pay attention to the uniforms, and this is a battle of cats. So an interesting choice for Arizona playing Kansas State to go with the script cats. Nice idea there. And, I think script stuff looks pretty cool for the most part. So they look a little Houston-y if you didn't look at the shoulders, like as far as the red, white, red. But I like the script on the sides, and we'll see, man. They are a team that is a tale of two games. They were really good offensively and very explosive and prolific in their first game, and Tetero McMillan had a huge showing. And then last week he did nothing because they were obviously ready for him and making anybody else beat them, and Arizona couldn't really do that all that well. So their offense was not great in the second week, and the defense really led them. So I don't know what to expect with Kansas State, but I do think that'll be a fun battle of the cats. That maybe that becomes like a more routine thing between those two on the football field and on the basketball court as well. But yeah, that looks like a nice little change for that game.
Wouldn't it be something if at the end of the year those two are fighting for the conference title and this game won't matter? It might. It might.
Would it? I don't know.
Not the tiebreaker would be like maybe.
I think it'd be stupid not to if you played each other, but yeah, it's
a non-conference game. Remember now the tiebreakers like head-to-head, common opponents in the Big 12, and then there's like a third one. One of them is who could win a gunfight, and then this one here. So
I think we need to check the language, because if head-to-head says head-to-head or head-to-head in conference play, that's a big difference.
I have it here in my folder. I'll let you guys know what it actually
Regardless,
says.
it's two of the teams that you thought coming in were going to be in the running for the title. I think that's still the case. I think K-State's looked a little bit better than Arizona, but K-State has their own issues to iron out, and it's not like major things that can't be overcome. They're just not like super sharp right out of the gates.
Right.
But they're 2-0. They got a big win in New Orleans, and I think they'll be favored in this game. So, yeah, that ought to be fun, and that's one of those first Pac versus Big 12 matchups in this new era that I'm looking forward to.
All right, a couple of more notes. We will have Ari Temkin of Big 12 Radio Network at 3:40. SMU. This has been a surprise. Preston Stone coming back from a very nice year. Jennings, of course, played down the stretch and played a lot. And they're going to Kevin Jennings, as Rhett Lashley, after the loss to BYU, will replace Preston Stone. Jennings played in that title game for SMU for the American Conference. He now will get the start coming up this week.
Yeah, it's been one of the big surprises to me this year that Preston Stone just hasn't been very good. And the other night, only got 4 passes in, and BYU was pinning their ears back and rushing him. We'll see how Kevin Jennings does here. But I think it's interesting to note that, Kevin Jennings didn't win this job at a camp, if there was a true competition or not, and he is there now. I mean, maybe it makes them better. I hope for SMU's sake, it makes them better, say, for 2 weeks from now. But I think that this is interesting, and Preston Stone not being good, and he's played well in the past, but not being able to avoid the rush is kind of a new little wart on his game.
Yeah, this is not at all what I expected. I thought Kevin Jennings would continue to play a little bit, but I don't know. I didn't have Preston Stone getting benched 3 games in on my bingo card. Like that's not great for him. And I don't know what's going on there. Like you got the yips or something. I mean, you played a lot of football. You shouldn't suddenly not be effective. And I don't know what to make of that. I know you make some of it of that Kevin Jennings is a pretty good player who they have high hopes for, but that doesn't explain Stone not performing well. So that's a pretty drastic measure for Rhett Lashley to take. And, I think that's just what you've got to do at this point. So, yeah, awfully disappointing, especially if you're somebody who had like Preston Stone in your fantasy league or something, thinking this offense was going to put up big numbers, and because he has put up big numbers in the past. But, he's just not getting it done, and you've got to steer the ship the right way. So that's what Rhett Lashley's doing, and trust him to do that.
Well, so he's made that change. Here's another note about, I think we're going to adopt him, Ashton Jeanty. 9 rushing touchdowns through 2 games, most in Mountain West history, and the most in FBS football since Ricky Williams had 9 on his way to the Heisman Trophy in 1998 at Texas.
Yeah, one other thing I remembered, I was watching Rhett Lashley the other day. He said that initially they were trying to just let Preston Stone be the guy. like in that game, and then he just wouldn't. But like the 2 drives he had to start the game were just so bad. They're like, well, we got to do something. We have to do it. So that's what happened the other night. Was they actually this is you, like you take it, and he didn't perform. So again, that was another comment I remember now in hindsight. But sorry, what did you just mention there? My bad.
About Ricky Williams.
Okay.
Ashton Jeanty has 9 touchdowns on the ground. Ricky Williams had 9 in 98 on his way to the Heisman Trophy. Of course, was the record-breaking running back there.
Yeah, I mean, I should have made T-shirts as the number 1 president of the fan club before all of the hype started. But unfortunately, I think where I turn now, people are talking about Ashton Jeanty, which is great because he deserves it. Wish they could have pulled out that upset against Oregon the other night. That would have been incredible, and he certainly did his part in that game to help them do that. They couldn't pull it off. But yeah, he's on a nice tear through 2 weeks. I don't know if he can keep it up. I believe that he can. I just don't know if what defenses start to do, and if his teammates can make sure that it's not all on his shoulders and his shoulders alone. If they can, then yeah, he's got as much of a pathway to the Heisman as anybody, not named Quinn Ewers, basically right now. So I'm hoping he finds his way to New York. I would love to see that for that young man, and he would certainly be deserving based on what we've seen so far. But there's a long way to go. It's still cool to see a player who's not at the same 10 schools getting a lot of this attention early on, though.
Quinn Ewers got some attention for that win against Michigan in Ann Arbor. Massive crowd in the big house. His stats overall were not like wow, but 24 of 36. He was very efficient, cool, calm, and collected. 246 yards and 3 touchdowns against Michigan. He has been named this week's Earl Campbell Tyler Rose Award National Player of the Week.
Yeah, he qualifies because he plays at Texas for one, so already plays in the state, but also is from Southlake. So he's a double, I guess, entry as far as being eligible for the award. And he didn't have the gaudiest numbers, like you said, but he had them in the big house against a top 10 team and a huge non-conference game in front of, a bunch of millions of people. We'll get to that later. So, yeah, I think he's deserving. That was really impressive. He looked really sharp, and he is somebody who you hear now constantly after this past weekend, but you kind of heard some of it before. He's got a knack for the big games. I don't think that's something you can deny at this point. And, nearly last year got awfully close to them winning that Washington game at the end, if you all remember.
They're throwing the end zone to.
He was part of the reason why.
Yeah.
He's a great player. He's really coming to his own, and you're seeing why there was so much attention on him as a recruit and why there was such high upside. I think we're seeing that more and more, and he's really becoming the leader that at this point in his career you'd want him to be.
I don't know for sure if last year they won at Alabama. They have one in Lincoln. They have one in now Ann Arbor. They won at the Horseshoe in 2005. They went on to win the national title, beating Ohio State in a classic game when Lima Swede caught a touchdown pass with a couple of minutes left from Vince Young. They've pretty much almost checked all the bingo card boxes on the cathedrals of college football where they have won. There's probably a few where they haven't played, maybe a handful of what you would consider. They've won at A&M at Kyle Field when they have their huge crowds. And, of course, they play again with even a bigger stadium. They have, the Rose Bowl when they won the championship in 2000 was January 2006. But they have done a good job of checking off that particular list. DJ Lagway. Paul, is he good enough to bring them out of the funk? They, of course, won a game. They won big. He had 400-plus yards passing. Set a freshman record, school record, and good for him. Good for Florida. Get a little goose. Now, whether or not they come back to reality, which most likely they do.
Well, if Billy Napier is really sincere about keeping his job, he needs to either completely give the starting job to G.J. Lagway or transition Graham Mertz out in such a fashion that Graham Mertz doesn't realize that he's not the quarterback until he's not. Because I can say this with absolute certainty, and I know it was Samford, in one of the few games that Florida's gonna have that easy of a time this year. Graham Mertz would not have thrown for 400 yards against Samford. Absolutely would not have. DJ Lagway did. And now I know he's a true freshman, and I know all of this, but man, like, I don't know how many more times we've got to see Graham Mertz go out there and just be average for you to go, you know what? I need to roll the dice because they're going to have to get some sort of athletic edge as they get deeper into the SEC schedule. They're about to play a really athletic and strong defense in A&M. Then they've got to go play Mississippi State, and they've got Tennessee, and they've got all these other teams. I think the edge has got to be DJ Lagway. But if you don't want to do that, you know, I'm not stopping you, Billy.
The game against A&M is at home in Gainesville. I don't know what the Swamp will be like, but maybe someone like Lagway gets that fan base kind of cooking. I don't know.
Do you want to talk about, like, when it rains, it pours? So apparently last week there's a huge issue with a whole gigantic parking lot that's used for tailgating that like a wrong email got sent out to the parking enforcement people. And so they kept telling people who'd paid for those parking spaces that they couldn't park there that day. And so all these people didn't get to tailgate, and they were just.
What'd you read about this?
Oh, Matt Baker and several others. Like, there was a huge.
Is this from you being the editor of Seminoles Incorporated?
No. But we were just talking about with Baylor and everything.
Yep.
So, like, you're losing, and then you have this little snafu on a miscommunication.
You can't do it.
And nobody tailgates, and now people are even madder. And they're like, Billy's going to put Graham Mertz back in there. I can't park. And this. Like, it all builds.
It does absolutely build up. Fran Brown, we got to meet him for a little bit. He was at Baylor under Matt Rule. He's now the head coach at Syracuse. They're off to a nice start. Here's an interesting quote. When you play us, just be quiet. Reminding folks it's a new era at Syracuse, perhaps some early and or leading up to a game chirping. I like Fran Brown. I've reached out to Syracuse. I don't think we'll get him this week for sure, but I'm not saying no, we won't. And so there's Fran Brown with a nice start at Syracuse with the Orangemen.
Yeah, because he like picked up something Brent Key said and then made it sound like Brent Key like murdered the entire Syracuse family. So he's definitely learned from Kirby Smart of blowing something totally out of proportion to motivate his team. And he also learned that from Matt Rule to probably some degree as well, the motivation. So yeah, that's what that's about. That's Brent Key said something, Fran Brown took it and just made it total bulletin board material. And, you know, that's something he definitely learned from Kirby Smart, because you talk about somebody who can make it sound like the greatest team of all time somehow is being like made to lose, picked to lose by everybody in the country. Like that's what Kirby Smart does. And it's ridiculous, but that's part of the fun of it all. And so, yeah, Fran Brown learned from him and Matt Rule. So he knows how to motivate, even if it's over something that's not really what it appears to be.
I saw Shihan had this tweet. We've known him. He's, of course, from here. And it was pretty cool. I didn't know this. UL Monroe, first-year head coach Bryant Vincent, ex-UAB interim, who was passed over for the head coaching job by Trent Dilfer. And this past weekend, this was when the game was still going on, beat Dilfer straight up with a nice win for UL Monroe against Dilfer at UAB.
Yeah, the Fighting Brandos there at ULM. That's his alma mater. That was a great win for them. UAB is going to be very interesting, going forward with Trent Dilfer. He has very much a different look on coaching than a lot of people do. I think that we talked to Jacob Zeno about him, says he loves him and loves his intensity and his fire, but man, they took it on the chin from the Warhawks last week. Yes. What are they now? Are they still Warhawks?
The UL Monroe Warhawks. Yes, absolutely. They're 2-0 UL Monroe. UAB drops to 1-1. So there's a story. Zeno had 167 yards, 1 pick. They just didn't have much on offense in that game. Not even 260 yards, I think, total offense in that game. Now, first time ever, I don't have the tweet, Colt Kublik, who does a great job covering college football and also with the SEC. We've had him on a lot, and he's good. This is the first time ever. We showed the AP Top 25 poll. First time ever that 6 of the first 7 ranked teams, which, Craig, you brought up, they were SEC. That has never happened in college football in the history of the AP poll, and that does not surprise me. That's just almost impossible to do, but they have that right now.
Well, you went and you grabbed 2 teams that are perennially in the top 10, so you took those from somebody else, and those are now yours, and one of them's not working at their max potential right now, and that's Oklahoma, or maybe they are, and that's the scary part. Texas is, obviously arguably the best team in the country besides Georgia. You could debate on maybe Tennessee or whoever else you want to throw into that conversation, but I mean, yeah, I think stuff like that's going to be more commonplace because you've gobbled up the teams that are in the rankings for the most part. So, it's a really cool feat, but it's also well, yeah, you just went and added Oklahoma and Texas. So there's an extra one, if not two, top 10 teams pretty much every year, all year long. So that's a byproduct of realignment right there. The Big Ten will have something to say, I'm sure, and at some point about a record number of teams as well. But, I mean, it's really impressive, and it's, more of just what we're going to see, I think, moving forward in terms of bogarting a lot of the spots of certain things like the playoff or the top 10 rankings or whatever, because look, they've got the majority of the best teams now that they've gone and grabbed them. And guess what? If they go and poach it, Clemson and Florida State in the future, then they'll have 10 of the top 12 for the first time because you got 15 blue bloods in your conference. So that's all a byproduct of realignment, but it's a cool feat. And I don't think we'll stop there in week 2 with the poll records. I think there'll be more of that as the season goes along.
All right, Paul, real quick.
Yeah, it's just like Amazon saying hey, isn't it amazing? All these boxes we get delivered. Well, yeah, I mean, you bought everybody's business. Yeah, of course. Yeah,
those buildings, the one we have here in Waco and anywhere else, are just monstrous, but nothing compared to the size of the Tesla building down on what is the toll road on the east side of Austin, which is just insane how big that is.
Yeah, I mean, if nobody's just ever seen that building, it's the biggest building I've ever seen in person as far as from width-wise. It's crazy looking how huge that facility is when you drive by to go to the airport, which is what we were doing. It's massive.
Not done yet either. And
it's freaking. It's crazy.
Yeah, so we haven't even seen the full breadth of it.
I saw it when we went down to go fly out of Austin for Vegas to go to Big 12 Media Days, and it went on.
It's bigger than a stadium. But it's not super tall, so it's so big and wide.
How long is it? A mile and a half?
I don't know.
I think it's going to be a mile. Yeah.
All right. When we come back, Ari Temkin from the Big 12 Radio Network. I'm glad somebody, in fact, MC Gusto asked about why isn't there a radio show on Sirius XM? They're now on TuneIn.
You want to know why? Because they don't think the Big 12's worth it.
Yeah.
They did the same thing with the ACC. So all this Super League stuff is not happening. Well, it did in part, as far as the fandoms, and I can't imagine that losing Oklahoma and Texas didn't hurt a little bit for Big 12 radio. No, in terms of listeners, I think that probably had a little bit of an impact. But that's what Ari told us last time, was that he was told that it's not worth the squeeze anymore, them or the ACC, I suppose. So that's your answer there. And TuneIn swooped in and picked up Ari and is running with it.
And we love to have Ari on, and he will be next. This is 365 Sports. Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress in Robinson, Texas, who has handled and given me new life, so to speak, when it comes to my dental work, because I was not really good about kind of keeping up with what I should, other than the normal, the fundamentals. You brush your teeth. And, well, I was one of those that a week or so before my next dental appointment, oh, my God, I better start flossing and whatever. It's an everyday deal. And I've been able to finally it's been now about 1.5 years, 3 years, in fact, with Dr. Childress, where I've been able to get myself in position where when I do have to go back because of a teeth cleaning scheduled, I'm not petrified. I was scared to death to go into a doctor or dentist office because I knew something was probably wrong, a cavity, a tooth that was chipped, or there's going to be a root canal. And yes, of course, the needle in your jaw and the roof of your mouth that makes your eyes tear up. But Dr. Steve Childress, and I've been through some of that with him because he has helped fix my dental work, and it's not over. More to come. Stonewood Dental in Robinson, Texas.
Get behind the wheel of the 2024 Jeep Grand Cherokee Overland at Allen Samuels in Waco. Choose between 2 or 3 rows and save $12,000 or take advantage of 0% financing. Looking for something smaller? Drive home a 2024 Jeep Compass Latitude 4x4 and save $9,760, or take 0% financing and get $3,000. Don't miss out during the Make This the Summer of Jeep event at Allen Samuels in Waco, where we deliver your next adventure. See dealer for details.
Come by. Let's be friends. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Penny Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help us finally hear semaglutide. Affordable, highly effective. Google search Penny Clinic Waco and reach out to the Penny Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Penny to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pennycliniclowt.com.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Ari Temkin, Big 12 Radio Network on TuneIn Radio joins us. Great to have Ari with us. Craig and Paul, David Smoak on 365 Sports. So I have a brain freeze time for you. So the Big 12 football tiebreakers came out about a week or so ago, like everybody else's did. And the first tiebreaker is if two teams are tied for first, both teams participate in the championship game, the winner of the head-to-head will be the number one seed. If there is not a tie, does the game with Kansas State, Arizona count as head-to-head?
It does not. No, great question. And I'll be honest, we had the chief of football on with us, and we asked him, like Scott Draper, what it is, and it's funny because the day after is when they clarified it. So I wonder if he was caught off guard by us asking him or what. But no, in terms of the Baylor Utah game, obviously this past weekend, and then now Friday Arkansas, Arizona, and Kansas State. Those are non-conference games. They're pre-scheduled, and I think the conference knew that they would be important games to hold on to. So they've kept them on, and those are the two for this season.
Ari, this last week was kind of white knuckle week in the Big 12 for non-conference games. Oklahoma State was lucky to get out with the win at Arkansas. Kansas State lucky to get out of New Orleans, without a loss. Texas Tech got absolutely rolled in the Palouse. What are your thoughts on the overall state of the conference after this last week?
Yeah, I see that there are 6 SEC teams in the top 7 of the AP top 25, and I don't get it. I don't know what Oklahoma State has to do in order to get some respect on a national level. It's ridiculous. Oklahoma State won 10 games last year. They played in the Big 12 championship game. They've now won 2 games, including one against the big bad SEC in Arkansas. And yet, how do they get rated in the top 7? I mean, Mizzou has played nobody. Tennessee beat an NC State team that had to survive late against West Carolina. It's crazy to me. The perception thing about the SEC has gone so far. The SEC is 5-5 so far in Power 4 opponent games in the non-conference. Mississippi State got housed by a team in Arizona State that was supposed to finish at the bottom of the Big 12. So it's a long way around, Paul, to answer your question. Like, I don't know. I mean, I know what it is. It's the perception of the SEC, but it's taken on a life form of its own, and it has no bearing on reality. And I think the thing that sucks is it does. Perception is reality in this case. The AP Top 25 isn't going to decide who's in the playoff, but it goes a long way in the CFP committee picking who their teams are every single week. And the idea that the SEC just wakes up on third base every year is absurd. And I mean, again, there's a handful of teams in there. It's like, you're telling me that Oklahoma State's resume is not better than Mizzou? Like, I know Mizzou had a good year last year and they followed it up. They're 2-0, but like, Oklahoma State had a great resume last year. They followed it up. They're 2-0 with a better win than Missouri. I just don't get how they're top 15, but the big bad SEC, just because they're in there, Mizzou is now suddenly, top 6, top 7 for what? For giving up, 0 points in back-to-back games against Little Sisters of the Poor. Again, it's a perception thing, but it is reality in the case of college football. It goes a long way in figuring out what this thing looks like. And so as we kind of return to the idea of, would the Big 12 get 2 teams in? I think K-State very well, again, based on resume, should probably be a top 10 team. I think Utah, you could argue, is a top 10 team getting a win over Baylor. How about Iowa State? Iowa State has as good of a win as anybody that's in that top 7 and with their win over Iowa. So, whether it's taking into account what happened last year, which you're not supposed to do, but it seems like that's part of it. Whatever it is, it's insane to me that the SEC just starts on third base and we just assume, in college football media, you just hear like, oh yeah, of course, that's the way it should work. Like, no, what, and on what planet should that work like that?
Ari, what's your concern level with Texas Tech 2 weeks in?
Whew. Well, how concerned are you guys in Waco? Now multiply that by 100. It seems like.
yeah, that's probably about right.
Yeah, I mean, look, did I think they'd lose as badly to Washington State as they did? No, but yeah, I mean, you figured after what happened against ACU week 1 that they were in big trouble. They've got a combination of issues in terms of their offense isn't playing great and their defense is not good at all. Not having Taj Brooks was a huge loss for them because they just don't have as good of a running back stable as some of these other teams in the Big 12 that can sustain, withstand the loss of a guy like Taj Brooks. But yeah, I mean, considering that Wazoo is not even a Power 4 team right now, that was a brutal show. I mean, they were in the game. I think it was 21-10. And then you look up, it's the fourth quarter, it's 34-10. I mean, it was just a housing. And, I mean, there's a ton of pressure on Joey McGuire. I think he's a great coach. I mean, you guys know him as well as anybody after his time in Waco and obviously at Cedar Hill. Like, everybody's rooting for him. He's a hell of a coach. He's a great personality. But yeah, this thing is circling the drain right now for Texas Tech. There's just not, like, Wazoo just destroyed Tech up front, which we shouldn't have been surprised about because ACU did it the week before.
Right.
No, you're right. They ran up a bunch of numbers, and Washington State ran for 300 plus yards in that game. So the Big 12 has some nice wins, and they have some like KU losing to Illinois, who's a team that Brett Bielema has had success where he's been, right? But that was a little bit I wasn't surprised they lost to Illinois, but there's a little bit of rumblings with Jeff Grimes up there, and how come they didn't finish with those great running backs? And so not everything perfect in Lawrence, Kansas.
No, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Smokey. I mean, Jalen Daniels did not look good at all in that game. He was bad. He did not give them a chance to win the football game. And despite that, their running game was clicking. Devin Neal was running for 7 yards a carry. Daniel Highshaw was running for 6 yards a carry. It's inexcusable that they would not lean on their run more down the stretch of that game, considering, again, Jalen Daniels is not playing very well. I mean, he had 3 picks in the game. He had a horrible pick 6 in this game that made Shedeur Sanders' pick 6 look like a much better play. And so just given, I think, the context of the game itself, when you have a lead in the fourth quarter with 2 different running backs averaging at least 6 yards a carry, and one of those guys, and Daniel Highshaw, only has 9 total carries in the game, and the other guy, and Devin Neal, only has 14, it feels like they've spent a career in limiting Devin Neal's carries. Dude's got to be at 20 to 25 carries in a game where you've got to lead late. It was inexcusable, Smokey. I mean, it's not like they were behind and trying to catch up. They were winning, and they weren't running the football with a quarterback that couldn't throw. It was inexcusable. And of course, as you know, I'm a KU alum.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It was really difficult to watch because that's a game they need to win, and it's like, okay, I mean, from a conference standpoint, how much goodwill is undone from a conference when you beat Iowa, when Iowa State beats Iowa, but then Kansas, which is a team that many picked to be towards the top of the Big 12, lost to a mid to lower level Big 10 team. Brutal.
Yeah. KU alums are just difficult in general. I mean, living with one, I can just tell you it's difficult. But
you guys don't talk college football much at your house, do you, Paul?
No.
She can really not give a damn about Kansas football.
Although last week, she was out with her friends. I text her. I'm like, hey, KU just lost. And she like actually texted back, damn it. I was like, oh, now she's starting to care.
She thought it was an exhibition game against like Russia or something like that.
I guess. But Ari, you mentioned Shedeur Sanders and that awful pick six. This is not going the way that anybody wants it at Colorado right now. And are you surprised that Dion didn't look at last year and change a lot of the things? Because they're like, the only thing they changed was like, well, it's not the scheme, it's the players we have. No, it's probably also a little bit the scheme and the way that you're calling these plays that you can't block or tackle.
Yeah. So a couple of things. Number one, I do think Nebraska's defensive front is very, very good. So I think it was a combination of not a great offensive line against an overpowering defensive front. I think going into that game, you could see this could pose major problems for Colorado offense. It's still trying to figure out what they have. They are better up front on offense. It just didn't appear that way in this game because, again, I do think that Nebraska front is that good. I don't know. When you force Raiola to throw, is he an inexperienced quarterback? How is he going to look throughout the remainder of the year? I don't know how good of a team they're going to be, but I do buy that defensive front. And we know Matt Rule, that's one of his calling cards is having that, that explosive defensive front. And I think he's got that. So I think it's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. A few other things at play here. Number one, you obviously are not going to attract a ton of talent when you're the one telling people, hey, if you want to join our team, DM me. And you're basically putting together the roster, Shedeur Sanders, and then you go and complain about the roster that you and yourself put together. You're not going to find many people that are going to be happy for you or on your side when you do that, because that's it, right? You're mad and complaining to the media about the offensive line that you yourself put together. I don't get why on earth Dion thinks it's a good idea to employ old retread coordinators from the NFL as his offensive and defensive coordinators. Pat Shurmur is a very smart offensive mind. I think he's obviously put together an impressive resume and career. I just don't know that he's built to run college football in 2024. You've got to be more multiple. The pro style to me is a huge mistake, especially again, given what you have. You've got trouble along your offensive line. Take a page out of Dave Aranda's book. Run some things to help the fact that you don't have a good offensive line like they're doing this year, as opposed to what Baylor continually tried to do last year. So I think like the marriage of Pat Shurmur as an offensive coordinator was not a good idea. Again, based on you don't have much of an offensive line. This is not how 2024 college football runs. If you're trying to get Shedeur to look his best, get him outside the pocket, get him running, rolling, get some movement, some pre-snap motion. And then their defensive coordinator is a guy that's long tenured NFL coach that's never called plays in Livingston. So, to me, the coordinator hires were puzzling. He's really big on hiring NFL guys. I just think, that would have been smarter. Now, what happened obviously last year was they didn't like what they were running on offense when they had that kind of an offensive coordinator. But I don't think it was the offensive coordinator's fault that the line couldn't block, and that's an improved offensive line. Again, I think expectations got so skewed for them because they started 4-0 last year, 3-0, whatever they were, 3-1. 4-1. I still think that this is a team that could be a bowl team. I really do. I think that game said a lot more about Nebraska than it did about Colorado, because I think that Nebraska defensive line is that good.
Arizona State had a really nice win over Mississippi State. Had to hold on there, but were very impressive, especially early. Cameron Scadaboo just doing his thing. A very fun player to watch this year in the Big 12. What's your interest level on a scale of 1 to 10 in Arizona State, Texas State on a Thursday night in San Marcos? Like, mine's a 10, Ari.
20,
this game,
30.
This game is really interesting, especially with Arizona State holding up their end of the bargain so far.
Yeah, so for one, I love Kenny Dillingham. The dude is amazing. He's so smart. He's so innovative. I love the way that he's so genuine with the media. He's just an open book. And I think in 2 weeks, this team has a pretty good identity, which is more than you can say about any other team in the Big 12 right now.
Yep.
They run the football effectively and they play defense and they get after you up front. I mean, they had a ridiculous big man touchdown that was the Old Trappers beef of the week.
Yep.
And CJ Fight, who had, I mean, one of the most amazing big man touchdowns you'll ever see. Basically, he kicked the ball as it was fumbled by Shapen. God, Baylor players all over the place. Bears all over the place. Ball's fumbled by Shapen on a sack. It's going out of bounds. He actually kicked it. He grabbed it before it goes out of bounds and then has the wherewithal to stick his hands across the plane to get the touchdown. The announcers didn't even know that it was close to being a touchdown, didn't even announce it as it was. And I think watching it live, it was hard to identify that that's what he was doing. Super smart play. They called it a thick 6. Good job, Big 12, with the branding there. But yeah, I love them. And I love this matchup. This is a really difficult matchup for them because we haven't totally gotten a sense of how good they really are. Wyoming has looked terrible, and they're 0-2. And then Mississippi State, I mean, I guess they're in the SEC. So, you know, if Mississippi State gets one good win in the SEC this year, they'll probably be ranked in the top 25 in the playoff chase for all we know. So, and look, Texas State just housed UTSA at a game that, you know, many thought to be kind of as we're looking at the radar for a group of 6 team that could be a playoff team. The Texas State UTSA game is one that we thought could go a long way in helping to determine that. And Texas State just housed them. So I love that. And the fact that it's, you know, in San Marcos is really interesting. It's a good, true road game for them it's Thursday night, right? That's there's like, 2 Friday night games and 1 Thursday night game in the Big 12 this week.
Yeah. That's Thursday night on ESPN too. Yep. That game, that Texas State ASU game on Thursday night. Is there anything we haven't mentioned, brought up about the Big 12 that you go, you got TCU, of course, in an interesting game coming up at home against UCF. And UCF, Jefferson was in the first week, okay, a little bit better last week. And then this one here, TCU, I keep thinking they're 1-1, but they won that game against Stanford. So these are 2 teams that could be fun to see what happens here.
This is a really interesting game. And by the way, this is a Big 12 game. I know it is confusing because there's been Big 12 games that haven't been counted as Big 12 games. This is the first Big 12 game of the year. And it could not have been drawn up any better. It's UCF right now is starting to get a real national love in terms of being a legitimate player in the Big 12. Look, they've got the best running game, arguably in college football. They RJ Harvey was a 1,400-yard back last year. Penny Boone was a 1,400-yard back last year. And he transferred in. You know, we know about the 2 other guys that are speedsters that they can line up, you know, in the slot or they line up in the backfield. So and then of course you think about the brilliance of Gus Malzahn as an offensive play caller. Like there's just so many toys at his disposal. It's such an interesting, intriguing team. And I think for TCU, there's some cautious optimism. You know, defensively, they look a lot more disruptive. You know, how quickly is that Andy Avalos defense taking when they're switched from that, you know, the rush 3 drop 8 to more of the 4-2 5 traditional look. So, I mean, they've had success with it early, but they haven't really played anybody. Stanford and Palo Alto is the best game, and who knows how good that team is. So I certainly give UCF the early nod, but there's a lot of intriguing about TCU, and especially at quarterback with Josh Hoover, a lot of unknowns. He's been good so far, but do they have enough playmakers? I like Jack Besh, who's a wide receiver who transferred over from LSU, but that's a really intriguing game. I'm also, I mean, like, the Cam Rising thing, guys, he just plays with a reckless abandon. The play that he got hurt on, there's no need for it. And it's been so stressed to him, you know, don't take those kinds of hits. And, you know, and people want to argue it's a dirty hit, whatever you want to argue, like he puts himself in position to get those hits, sustain those hits that are going to continually get him hurt. You know, they've got Zach Wilson's brother, Isaac Wilson, as the backup, who came in obviously in the second half. And I mean, Utah, if not for the Cam Rising injury, I have no idea what that score would have been, but I guarantee you that second half would have been a lot more interesting. I thought that game in particular was all I had to do was watch the first half and I knew exactly what happened to the entire game. And then we can all point and laugh at OU for having to survive against Houston, who might be the worst team in the Big 12. And I think that game said a lot more about OU than it did about Houston. So we can all point and laugh at them as they head into the SEC, having just barely squeaked by a Houston team that's not very good. So yeah, I think that's, from a rapid fire perspective, some of the interesting stuff. But this was a very, very active weekend for the conference. Week 3 will be not as high profile in terms of the games. I think Kansas UNLV is a very underrated game, especially coming off the game that Illinois just had. UNLV obviously housed Houston week 1. It's a very fun offense to watch. It's a really good football team. Kansas and UNLV have history. They played last year in the regular season, played in the Guaranteed Rate Bowl. So that one's a really intriguing matchup for Kansas to not drop to 1-2 and really fall out of the title race, so to speak, and gain their confidence back. And then how does Jalen Daniels perform? So yeah, no shortage of interesting storylines here after 2 weeks in the Big 12.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Ari Temkin, Big 12 Radio Network on TuneIn.
Download the TuneIn app, everybody, and favorite the channel. Have him
on our show and be a part of what we do every week leading up to a Big 12 weekend. And again, there are some. It's not an obvious. This is a non-conference game. It isn't whatever. It's a conference game. When we come back, Ricky Thompson. This is a pretty special week for him, and it's not just the Air Force and Baylor game, but what this week is celebrating with Baylor football history. This is 365 Sports. I just received this from Doug Furch, the Baylor alumni, and what they're doing this week. There are watch parties in the Phoenix and Scottsdale area. There are at K. O'Donnell's, California, Ventura County. There's a location, the Dugout. In Raleigh, North Carolina, at Village Raleigh. Also, Little Woodrow's Bel Air in Houston. And then in D.C., there's a location, Sports and Social Watch Party, hosted by Clay Huddleston in Washington, D.C. Those are just some of the locations. The Baylor alumni fan engagement can help you publicize not only who's in charge, but also how to get in touch with them and where they are going to be as, of course, the official Baylor Alumni Watch Party. You'll see that at the tailgate that's going on Saturday leading up to Air Force in that kickoff in the evening. And then they have that Southwest Conference 1974 lunch with the legends celebrating 50 years of that championship in 1974. Doug Furch, Paul Thorpe, and the great people to help you get together, whether in Waco or on the road around the country to watch Baylor, the Baylor Alumni Fan Engagement.
It's time to score big savings at the Kickoff to Savings event on GMC trucks at Richard Carr GMC. Take the winning drive with the Texas Truck MVP. GMC Sierra is the best truck on the road. Save $9,000 on 2024 GMC Sierra SLT models in stock with approved trade-in. Plus, qualified buyers get 1.9% financing and no payments for 90 days. See dealer for details. Save big and score your deal at the Kickoff to Savings event at Richard Carr GMC.
Richard Carr, they have the truck for you.
Edward Jones Financial Advisors Josh Satterfield and John Maddox understand these are difficult and changing times we live in, but they know how important your financial investments are to you. So is your financial advisor staying in touch with you and helping you navigate today's financial climate? When you invest with Edward Jones Financial Advisors Josh Satterfield, John Maddox, and Sean Carter, they will provide their time and experience to help you reach your goals. And like coaching athletes, investing money is about time, patience, and encouragement. Josh Satterfield and Sean Carter on Wycon Road off Bagby, and John Maddox on Sapphire Boulevard in Hewitt. Proud sponsors of Midway Panthers football. Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Membership SIPC.
El Conquistador restaurants are a very proud sponsor of the Midway Panthers, have been owned and operated by the Gonzalez family since 1969. El Conquistador is recognized annually as a local favorite with their fast and friendly service. Dine in or order takeout and enjoy your favorite Tex-Mex items as well as several traditional menu items. Catering is also available with 3 locations to serve you: Waco, Belmead, and Hillsboro. The Gonzalez family thanks you in Waco and the surrounding area for your continued support of 55 years in business. Go Panthers!
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. This segment is brought to you by Michelob Ultra. It's only worth it if you enjoy it. Containing only 95 calories and 2.6 carbs.
This segment with Ricky Thompson, Alliance Bank, also brought to you by Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, your Baylor Bear hotline. Ricky Thompson joins us, Baylor Sideline Radio. But, Ricky, what an emotional week for you. The 50th year of the 1974 Southwest Conference Championship. And we had Grant Tapp on when they announced that they would do this for this week with Air Force. And he was phenomenal and amazing at times how sharp he could still be. Your thoughts about what does this week mean to you?
Well, I tell you, you can really sum that up pretty quickly when you just know that 60-something guys will be back. Think about that, Smoak, 50 years ago, and you're going to have 60 guys that are back. I don't know how many even we had at the time, but pretty amazing that you can get that group of guys back together, stayed pretty close through all those years, and that just tells you a little bit not only about what that team accomplished, but what the relationship was like between the guys that were on that football team, that you can have that kind of response some 50 years later.
Ricky, when you think about that team, that game, was that game obviously was the seminal moment of the season, but was there one before that gets lost in the shuffle that people maybe forget because it was so momentous to beat Texas?
Well, Paul, actually, I think there were several. I think maybe it starts with one nobody really ever talks about, and that's Oklahoma State at home. I think they were ranked 8 in one poll, and we beat those guys 31-14. Steve Beard had a fantastic game and just really handed it to those guys, and followed up that next week on the road at Florida State. Now, Florida State wasn't what they are today. Of course, they're 0-2 today.
What are they today?
Cheap shot, Rick. Cheap shot.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry. Even now, Paul, they're a lot better than what they were then. I mean, they were in a losing streak that was pretty phenomenal in itself at the time. And we go down there and we're down 17-0 at halftime and looked terrible. Coach Tapp kicked in the locker room door because it was still locked. Burt Reynolds was being inducted at halftime, and Les Benson takes the band director off the ladder and sets him down because Coach Tapp says get the band off the field, and he took him to heart and did it. So we came back and won that one 21-17, and then the next week go on the road and come from behind in the fourth quarter and beat Arkansas 21-17. So there were some really big games before we ever got to Texas that we had to win that maybe at the time weren't considered that big because nobody really knew how good we might be.
Ricky, sorry to bring the mood down, but Utah this past weekend, that's going to be really cool. And hopefully the Bears can make it even better with a win against Air Force. But I guess we do need to talk about Utah first. What were your impressions coming out of that game? Certainly a tale of two halves, the rising injury, right there in the middle of that. What did you take away from what we saw in Salt Lake City?
Well, I think part of it is something we struggled with last year, and that's quick starts or not having quick starts and letting the game get a bit out of hand. Even saw it on the road against UCF last year in a game that we won some way by scoring 26 in the fourth quarter. But I thought maybe the moment got to us a bit, got behind quickly. Rising, great quarterback. I'm not sure he was really the difference in that game. I think the difference in that game were some mistakes that we made, a block kick that turned 10 points around. And even though Rising was out, he really had one touchdown drive, guys. I mean, he had a 2-yard drive, and then they returned a blocked field goal, 77 yards, which is really a 10-point flip. But you just can't have those kind of mistakes in a game against a really good football team. And I'm telling you, those dudes could play defense. Their front seven probably as good as we'll see all year, if not the best. But the other side of that is we hung in there tough. We came back when it was 23-12 on Josh Cameron's touchdown. That's the third quarter. You're in that ball game. You hold those people to 292 total yards. You should have a chance to win that game, and we didn't. And we know the struggles on the other side of the ball that were really a problem, and probably more so the difference than a Cam Rising or a Utah defense. I mean, Utah offense, our defense did what they had to do. And I think offensively, we really struggled, guys.
It was 23-0 at one point. And yes, there was the strip sack, but that counts. That led to a touchdown or a score. And then, of course, the block field goal. That counts. That's 77 yards. That doesn't show up in the offensive stats. I mentioned on Monday that Utah dominated Baylor, and some Baylor fans got a little bit sensitive over that. Would you say that that was too harsh, or was that about right?
Well, I see both sides to that, Smokey. I think Utah dominated the first quarter offensively. They had 150 yards in the first quarter. They didn't do much in the second quarter offensively, and with that, you put yourself back in the game. But 23-0, that's pretty much dominating in itself. You just can't afford to do that. Now, I think if you look at the game as a whole, a 23-12 game is not the domination that we see at times and getting the score out of hand. But to a certain extent, yes. And I do think that their defense did dominate the game.
Ricky Thompson with us, part of that 1974 team that will be honored this weekend, sideline analyst for Baylor on 365 Sports.
Ricky, I did like that you mentioned that they had one real touchdown drive in the first half in that game. So when you look at the defense and the way that they played, I mean, granted, not against Cam Rising for the entire second half, but they did stop some things. They did some things that they weren't doing. They have to play an offense that's going to run right at you all day long in Air Force and their triple option veer, whatever you want to call it. Do you think that bodes well for this week against the Falcons?
We played the run pretty well, and I think Air Force lost a lot of guys on offense. I don't think they lost 10 starters on the offensive side of the ball, so that has to affect you. I think they've struggled some offensively. I think maybe the run game is a strong part of our defensive football team right now. So I think probably this game fits us pretty well. The touchdown, particularly with the back coming out of the backfield at Utah, was a blown coverage. I mean, we saw that, and I think Coach Randa spoke to that those couple of mistakes there were giving up big plays that should have never happened when you're in the right call. But we've seen what this Air Force offense can do, and we saw it in person a couple of years ago in a bowl game when it was way too cold to be playing football. But they really took it to us, put 30 points on the board. I don't think we ever slowed them down. I think it'll be a little different. I think Coach Randa will adapt to that. I hate playing these teams like this, particularly in the regular season when you have to spend a week getting ready for an offense that you'll never see again. And I think from here out, you see some version of the spread. And I just think that's the concern to me, is it's an offense you prepare for 1 week and then you never see it again. and these military schools are so disciplined and run that offense so well. I think we've seen time and again them have big games against teams that they really shouldn't. So I know there's some concern there, but I do know too that this is a game that the Bears have to win. I don't think that's an option. I think it's early in the season. I know you don't need to say it, but I do think this is a must-win football game.
I was going to ask you about DeQuan Finn before we go, but I have to ask about that bowl game because we were there as well. Were you on the sidelines during that game?
Yes, I was.
Oh my
and it
gosh.
was cold.
Did you get paid triple for that? Oh my God, Ricky.
You know what? I didn't. And let me tell you the worst part of it. This is a funny story if you got 2 seconds. We finished that game, 12 degrees.
Yeah.
So we get in the locker room, and man, I'm stripping out of clothes because I had on so many warm layers that it wasn't terrible. So I get all of my warm clothes off. I mean, everything but like a polo golf shirt. And Coach Aranda comes out and says, "Get on the cart with me to do the post game." Well, here's this post game. So here this dude goes in the golf cart back out on the field. I've got on a short sleeve shirt. And we ride all the way to the other end of the field to the TCU locker room to do post game from the other end of the field. We get there. The guy driving the cart gets off and goes in. So I finish Aranda's show. I've got to walk all the way back to the other end of the field. I couldn't even feel my hands by the time I got back. It was 12 degrees, so that was a lot worse than the game. But it was awful. That was bitterly cold. I've been in one game colder than that, and that was in St. Louis playing with the Redskins. And other than that, that's the coldest game I've ever been in.
Yeah, that was something else that day. And we got to watch most from the press box, but still had to be out there a little bit. And I don't know how people did that the entire way. I mean, that was craziness. Ricky, just what are your impressions of DeQuan Finn through a couple of games? I think accuracy, obviously isn't always there. But Randall mentioned having a little bit of nerves. It's kind of surprising because he's played in a lot of games, but what's your feel for kind of just what's going on with him through a couple of games and, where you think this is headed?
Yeah, I knew that was coming. I think just what we've seen from Finn at this point is probably not good enough to win football games. I'm not saying he doesn't have that ability. He can run really well. His arm is better than average. I think he struggled with accuracy. Probably what would bother me a little more than that is maybe pocket presence. I think he's really struggled with that, with the rush and which direction to avoid a rush and maybe turning his back to the line of scrimmage at times. Those are things that are coachable. You can get out of that. But I'll just say this. He's going to have to play better for us to win football games, to win big football games. I know he's capable of that. You don't ever want to get into quarterback situations. I know these are kids, and I know they're getting paid now just like a lot of us do, but they're still kids, and it's tough calls when you have to make a change there. So that wouldn't totally surprise me if there might be, but I guess we'll find that out Saturday.
Yeah.
But I know he can play better than he's been playing, and I saw that on tape before he ever got here. But I think that if you ask Finn personally if he could play better than he did in the first two, I think he would tell you yes.
Well, they didn't make that commitment. Forget about just the fact that they brought him in. I know NIL and all that, and that gets brought into the play, but they didn't make that commitment to not have him play. And boy, would that be an interesting, like we saw SMU has now changed from Preston Stone to Kevin Jennings, who finished and played in the championship game of the AAC last year. And that's just 2 or 3 weeks into it. We've seen Florida change, basically all but change their quarterback. How difficult is that on a team when you make such an immediate change at quarterback? And I'm not saying Baylor's going to, but if they did.
Well, and that's where I was headed earlier. To make that call this early is really tough. And it wouldn't be throw out NIL, throw out any of it. When you name a kid through camp, you name him the starter, and you start talking about changing 2 weeks in, that's a tough call. It's tough on the football team, but I think, too, that maybe a football team has a sense of who needs to be playing. And they may think that's thin. They may think it's not. I don't know what they think. But those guys are smart, and they generally know or have an opinion at least of who the best guy is to have in the game. And I think one thing that overrides the fact of transfer, whatever it may be, you've got to win games. Coach Aranda's got to win games. I know Spav on offense has to call the game the way he thinks is most appropriate, gives you the best chance to win. And I think that's the quarterback you have to play. I don't know who that is right now, but this early in the season, it was sure to have been a lot easier if Finn would have had a couple of really good games, which about the first series he was in, he went 39 yards for a touchdown untouched. That looked pretty good.
Yeah.
But you've got to get better play back there, and I think everybody knows that.
Is that the first time? I think that's the first time that Utah and Baylor have played, so that's obviously the first time you've been to Rice Eccles. What were your impressions of that stadium and the crowd?
Pretty cool. Different atmosphere up there. Stadium's not that big, but it's right in the middle of the campus. I'd forgotten that that's where the Winter Olympic opening ceremonies had been some years ago. Still had the torch at the end of the stadium down there. So I thought that part was really cool. There were pictures in the press box of those opening and closing ceremonies, and pretty cool. I think it's a neat environment. Stadium holds 51, so it's not huge, but they've won 36 out of 38. That speaks really all you need to know to me when you're 36-2 at home out of the last 38 ball games. So I thought it was really cool. I'd look forward to going back with maybe a different result.
Yep, I agree. They had a really good run with Coach Whittingham, and they play like it too. They play like him and his personality. Enjoy. What is there, a luncheon on Friday to celebrate the 74 team? And then obviously there'll be whatever is done during the game. I know you have sideline duties, but enjoy a trip down memory lane and enjoy being around the guys that helped win a conference title when you were there.
Well, that's really fun. We got a dinner Friday night, and I think that's probably going to be the most fun event for all of us, because we'll spend that time just at dinner at the Letterman's Lounge, and they'll probably have to run us home to get us there before the game starts the next day.
I bet they do.
That may be a late night.
I bet they do. Hey, man, thank you very much for your time, Ricky. Ricky Thompson with us, former Baylor and Washington, then Redskins wide receiver, Baylor sideline radio analyst. Someone brought up in the chat about would you have him just one show go down with some of the memories of playing at Baylor, but also with Washington. We've discussed that with him, with Theismann, his roommate and best buddy when he played in the NFL, but we will do that. Paxton, you asked a question. Sounds like a big deal for Baylor. Texas doesn't celebrate 2005 every year, but I get it. They don't celebrate 1974 every year. They're celebrating this year because it's the 50th year. And most anniversaries and celebrations, you get the 10-year, 25th year, and then 50th year. And believe me, the stories behind that, which we'll tell you later in the week, they were about to shut the program down. They were close to having no administrative support, and that kind of gave them a chance to at least continue that football program, and Grant Taft's belief to do that too. We need to play that back the day we had them on when they made that announcement. Not today, but at a different show this week. When we come back, we'll look at the Big 12. Craig's off the radar around the corner. Troy Calhoun, the head coach at Air Force, will join us at just after 5. John McClain, oh my goodness, a lot more in Paul's top 5 in about an hour and a half. This is 365 Sports. So Don Humidor has Texas brand cigars. A 48-foot walk-in humidor. When you walk in their front door in the Townwest Shopping Center, you walk straight back towards what is the cash register, and there's also some glass area where you could see pipes that they have, or even CBD, Vita Dreams, and lighters and cutters and all that. But when you walk back to the right, there's a 48-foot walk-in humidor, so large there's 2 different doors entering it. When you enter the first one and go straight back to the right inside the humidor, they have the Texas Wall. Warfighter out of Schertz, Texas, which is, a speed zone just outside of San Antonio, Combat veteran owned and operated. McAuliffe Cigars out of Dallas. Smoke the way you want, above the pay grade. Roma Craft Cigars out of Austin, a boutique company, also with full, bold flavor cigars. Rojas Cigars out of Richardson, designed and delicious, named after your favorite Mexican food. Come smoke a whole enchilada or a breakfast taco. They have that too. Hope you enjoy. If you smoke cigars, Don's Humidor and Coffee Beans with Joshua and Cheyenne. They are inside the Town West Shopping Center in between Richland Drive and Valley Mills in Waco.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma, and they have to come here. They're used to lights, they're used to water in their mouth, they're used to experience, they already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8 year old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texans are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Pioneer Steel and Pipe opened their doors in 1943, and they have never wavered with their focus on great product and customer service, relationships with a handshake, making sure you, the customer, is satisfied. Their new facility is now twice the size, allowing new inventory, higher quantities, and in a much more organized fashion. In addition to the long lengths in tubing, angles, channels, rods, and flat, Pioneer Steel and Pipe now offers several shorter, more convenient lengths of material already cut. Their 2,500 square foot showroom has over 1,000 new products in stock, new welding supplies, hardware, quickcrete, and do-it-yourself components for any project, whether you are a professional contractor or weekend warrior. The new facility is designed to make your loading experience faster and more efficient, with easy drive lanes around the building and much more room to get your trailer loaded. Our location may have changed, but our values haven't, and our relationship with customers goes much farther than just business. Pioneer Steel and Pipe on Loop 340 and Highway 6, and just east of I-35 in Waco.
Some say a dog is a man's best friend. But I tell you what, boys, you better think again. 'Cause there ain't nothing better than some cows, pigs, and turkeys too. I love to cover them in sauce down at Rudy's Barbecue.
Bring all your friends to Rudy's for some tasty oak smoke barbecue.
Next in line.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
This is 365 Sports Podcast on YouTube, 365 Sports Channel, other different parts of under the umbrella of whatever podcast we have throughout a lot of what we do. But pods, I went to podcast because we're in pod 4 today when it comes to the Big 12. Pod 4 includes Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado. 3 of those teams, I believe, are 2-0. And then one, Colorado, of course, is off to the start that they have after the loss over the weekend. Let's start with Arizona. They have Kansas State. It's a non-conference game, which is part of what we've now brought up a couple of different times. Your thoughts on what you've seen from Fafita and McMillan had that monstrous game to open up with, and they have the game with K-State on the road.
Arizona has been they're 2-0, so you can't sneeze at that, but they've been spotty. Kansas State 2-0, and they've been spotty. So from that perspective, this game is really interesting to see who can put their best foot forward and play a complete game, because I don't think either one of them have yet. Obviously, Fafita and McMillan are fantastic, but if Kansas State's defense finds a way to contain McMillan a little bit, they're going to have to find other targets, other things to go to. But so far, so good for Arizona in the Big 12, but this is the first time they're playing a Big 12 team, even though it's a non-conference game. But I think it'll be a tight one. I think it's going to be interesting to see them go on the road in Manhattan, where they're going to show out on Friday night and get loud and get crazy. And we'll see how the Cats handle that on either side.
Yeah, I mean, they were missing some guys the other night. That's worth noting, but they got to find a balance of some sort. Tetero, McMillan, and Noah Fafita had that big first week that really McMillan got, all the honors and the credit for, but somebody had to throw him the football. Regardless, that was not the case on Saturday. I mean, they locked in on T-Mac, as you might expect, and they shut him down. And then when it came to other Arizona players having to step up to make plays, they just didn't have the ability to do that. And you had a game that was a lot tighter, especially when you look at the final score, than you'd ever have anticipated playing a directional school like Northern Arizona. Respectfully, it's just that you shouldn't be sweating that 22-10 when you're a top 25 ranked team. So if that was just a one-off and they had won huge in the first week, then maybe you just blow it off and be like, hey, that was just a weird thing. But the fact that they struggled in the first week a little bit, and then this was a struggle, but it was like for a different reason, is kind of why you're like, all right, well, what is this going to be? Because it was the offense that was the big explosive party in the first game, and then the defense really carried them in this game. So they got to figure out the eligibility situation of Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. That was something that got brought up. He is out of the lineup right now because of some school issues, which I don't know, like grades or what, but it was just a question about his eligibility. So he's not available for them right now. So that's, one player that you check off that would normally get some touches for them. And I think you're just really thankful that they won this game and that they can move on to the next one and look at the fact that they could very well be 0-2. And instead they're 2-0, and they have room to play a lot better, and they have tons of room to play an actual complete game because we haven't seen that yet, but we haven't seen that from a lot of teams. So, I just think you're fortunate, but there's a lot of work to be done, and you can't play the way that you have in some areas the last couple of weeks and expect to beat Kansas State. So this will be a big test for them.
Nor can Kansas State.
Right. No, absolutely. Yeah.
By the way, Teteroa McMillan, who had that monstrous game in the opening win that they had 2 catches for 11 yards.
Well, yeah, they locked in on him and said, throw the football somewhere else and make plays somewhere else. And when he couldn't do it, that they didn't have the ability to do it themselves. The O-line struggled. I know they've been, working with different O-lines and trying to figure that out. So, going through that process early on in the season, I think there's a lot of teams out there that don't quite have their O-line where they want it or this where they want it. And for Arizona, they definitely had some O-line issues that contributed to the difficulties on Saturday night. So, yeah, that's got to get ironed out in a major way, or you're going to have more nights like you did against against Northern Arizona. Sorry.
All right, Paul, Arizona and Kansas State. I hate that it's a non-conference game, but it's a good football game. It'll be fun to watch.
Yeah.
All right, one more game, of course, and we've got many more to get to. All right, so we've gone to Arizona. We've discussed a little bit about Arizona State, plus what Ari brought up with Fight's short touchdown run, which was delicious, the former Texas high school star at Tatum High School. So, game up, Arizona State Thursday night. This game here, I mean, they're 2-0, and don't you know, Texas State, this could be one hellacious game on Thursday night in San Marcos.
Yeah, if Arizona State really is better now, I think they're going to have to get more out of the passing game because they didn't get anything from Sam Levitt the other night. But Cam Scatterbo, I mean, he scatterbooed all over the place. It was he was fantastic, absolutely fantastic against Mississippi State. They didn't have a single answer for him. And if Texas State doesn't have an answer for him, then maybe Sam Levitt doesn't have to do anything week to week. But they're going to have to get more out of the passing game. I trust Kenny Dillingham to do that, but they do need more. But as long as you've got Scatterbo back there, I think you're going to be in every game.
Yeah, it's interesting that he trimmed down a little bit, but is still able to run as hard as he does. That was one of the things mentioned on Saturday night. He obviously had a really good game, and he was a guy who, when Arizona State was entering the league, I mean, that's immediately where you pointed in terms of their star power, just like you pointed to Fafita and McMillan with Arizona. Like Scatterbo is that guy coming back for the Sun Devils. So he did his part. He was the star of that show. They couldn't pass well, as Paul mentioned. That's got to change. Levitt's got to be better there for them to be what all they can be and to take some of the pressure off of their run game. But they had a really nice first half, had a poor second half, allowed Mississippi State back into the game. And Mississippi State, deserves some credit too for getting back into the game. But that was a tale of two halves. Unfortunately for the Sun Devils, they were able to hold on and win by a score, whereas it looked like early on in that game they were going to win by 3 or 4 scores. I mean, they were taking it to Mississippi State. You mentioned the fight touchdown. That was a huge play. It's probably going to end up on the highlight reel at the end of the year for just the conference in general. But they've got a fun defense, and they play hard for Kenny Dillingham, and they seem like they've got some confidence brewing. So if they can get the pass game going, then I think there's a lot to like about this team, and certainly they're a strong candidate to be that team that you go, they were voted 14th or 15th or 16th, and they ended up 7th. Like, they're going to be that team that was ranked way lower than they should be, potentially, based on what we've seen these first couple of weeks. But this is going to be a hell of a test. Like, it's a weeknight game in San Marcos, and this Texas State offense that is the next big thing, basically, with a 7th-year quarterback who's played at 4 different schools. That's ridiculous. But Jordan McLeod, I mean, as experienced as you could possibly be at the college level, he's been everywhere. So that's going to be really, really tough for the Sun Devils. Like, I think they should win this game, but there's so many unique circumstances that it's just boiling up to be hell for them to try and walk out of there with a win. They can do it, but they're going to have to deal with a lot of adversity to do it.
Well, I love watching, and we've seen this with the Big 12, a team like West Virginia last year, and I'm not comparing them to 9-win West Virginia, but they're 2-0. They were picked near the bottom of the Big 12 by 99% of everybody, and I'm kind of happy for them to start the way they are. And again, this is a tough road test. We know about Texas State and what they can do, and so now does Jeff Traylor.
First win ever over an SEC team. I said that earlier, but it's worth mentioning because we're not going to mention the second or third time. We'll never mention it again, but the first time is pretty cool, and that was what they got with that win over Mississippi State. So congrats to ASU. But, yeah, if you turn around and lose to Texas State, like Texas State might go to the playoff. They might be the G5 rep for all we know. So by the end of the year, that doesn't look that bad, but you want to keep the good times rolling. Yep. Go beat them, and then you're really on to something at 3-0. You got a couple of, pretty nice wins.
Utah against a rival, the Aggies of Utah State. Utah playing at 3:30 on Saturday on CBS Sports Network.
If they don't have Cam Rising, this game could get super interesting because it doesn't look like their offense moves without him at all. And that's evidenced by last year and then the second half of the game against Baylor. And I'm not trying to take away from Baylor's defense, but Isaac Wilson wasn't really, lighting it up the other day. Now, I guess he didn't really expect to play that much, but even still, with a week of preparation, they should beat Utah State. But without Cam Rising playing in the game, it makes everything really dicey for Utah.
Yeah, they did their thing at the beginning of that game last week and never really had to sweat it too much, although Baylor made it sort of kind of interesting there late. I think it's all about Cam Rising, as you said, like what's his health status. And I doubt he plays this week just based on kind of the way it looked last week. I mean, maybe he surprises and he does. He fights through it. That'd be great if he does, because I think right now they're the only legit playoff contender in this league. The one that you can sit there and feel pretty good about projecting that far ahead, but not if they don't have Cam Rising. You don't, because they're not I mean, there's definitely a step down. I know what Ricky said, like Cam Rising wasn't like a superstar on Saturday, but he's way better than Isaac Wilson is. And he's very experienced. And in a league where a few months ago I was saying like, hey, this is a hell of a year for quarterbacks because of the preseason hype. I got caught up in it, but like Eric Green and Jalen Daniels and all these guys, like there's not really a lot of great quarterback play right now. There's really not. There's a lot of guys who are like figuring it out, but are like seesawing a little bit. And so I think having Steady Eddie and Cam Rising is an advantage for a team that's already built better than a lot of the other teams.
He's a perfect fit for their mentality because he has that mentality. Utah State was just destroyed by USC 48-0.
No, they should cruise in this game. This should be 3-0 without a bat and an eye. And so if you're going to have Cam Rising miss a game, this is the one to miss. But they are to me the number one team still in the league.
We have Craig's off the radar around the corner, and then that Troy Calhoun interview and John McClain. But we have one more team. We've discussed them a lot, so really not much to say here to me. Colorado and Colorado State last year in Boulder was a phenomenal game, an emotional game, and Colorado was able to pull it out with like a 90-something yard drive to force, I believe, overtime, led by Shedeur down the road. And we know that this is kind of a little bit of a rivalry between the two coaches. Colorado State, Colorado, the game is not. It is in Fort Collins, I believe. Am I right?
Yep.
I believe it is. I believe it's at Colorado State.
Yeah, it is. It is at Colorado State. What Colorado has exposed, though, through the first couple weeks is you don't have to have a really ornate game plan to control the game against them. You need to run up the middle, and you need to pin your ears back and come at Shedeur Sanders as much as you can.
But you better get him and not allow him to kind of get. Yeah.
Colorado State, like I genuinely think they're going to have a very, very hard time covering all four of those receivers. We forget about Will Shepherd a little bit because he wasn't in the first game, but he's also very good, a transfer from Vanderbilt. You're not going to be able to really cover all the four of those receivers. So to me, you need to say, damn the torpedoes and let's go get Shedeur Sanders. But on the other end of that, Nebraska, only rushed 3 or 4 guys most of that game when they pinned their ears back and got all those sacks. So if you can do that, I don't know. I think that the game plan gets really easy, and people can simplify against Colorado until Colorado proves otherwise.
Texas crushed them 52-0. They never sniffed, and they came back to win their second game. But Colorado, Craig, after getting humbled, I would think is a good way to put it in Lincoln.
I don't know if that's possible, honestly, but if they were going to be, then that would be the game to do it. And, yeah, they basically dared Colorado to run, and Colorado still didn't decide to run. So what do you do? I mean, here, no, please run. Nope, we're going to keep throwing it with Shedeur. Like, that's what Colorado did. So I don't know. I don't know beyond I think Colorado should win this game. I don't care where it's being played. They should win this game. I know there's the bad blood, as you spoke to, between the two head coaches, and that got frisky last year. But I'd expect Colorado to win this game, have a nice bounce back, because I don't think Colorado State is anywhere close to who they just played in week 1, or maybe even the past 2 weeks, honestly. So I think this is a get right for them, but man, they got a lot of questions. And like I said earlier, you don't have to bring any more gas or matches to this party. Like, it's all ready to explode at any moment with the way things have shaped up these first couple of weeks. So let's just see what they look like and see how Shedeur's, gelling with that O-line, and see if they can get any type of a run game going in week 3, if they even attempt to do that. And let's just see, man. That's where I am with Colorado. Let's just see. They are a story and will be for right now until they drop a couple more games. But, we saw how that went last year, where they were as hot could be, and then they were just it's like they fell off the face of the earth in the second half of the season. I don't think they're quite there. I think the interest is still there, but you lose to Colorado State, and I don't think we're going to be talking about Colorado much more, except for where Dion's living next year, basically. So they got to win this one.
Man,
they should.
Yeah, there's some kind of a post from Norvell's wife during Big 12 media days that, remember, they were there. Mountain West Conference was there along with the Big 12 in Vegas. There's something, I don't know. But there's always something outside of just what's going on fundamentally with your football team, one way or the other, good or bad. So there is that. All right, we're not going to break here. We're going to go straight to Off the Radar. Garrett, hit the stinger if you can.
I don't have a stinger.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Greg, Smoak, and off the radar.
All right. Let's get into off the radar here and just a couple of notes from around the world of sports. Normally, look at ratings and things like that during this time of week, and that's what we'll do here. As you had the big Saturday, the big noon Saturday, to be more specific, over on Fox, where Texas and Michigan played, and Texas obviously with the rout in that game. Big win for the Longhorns and Steve Sarkisian, but a big rating for Fox as well. 9.35 million viewers for Texas and Michigan. So we thought it would maybe get into that double-digit range, but actually fell just short of that. 9.35 million viewers on Fox Big Noon Saturday. That was better than all but 5 games from the entire 2023 season. The only games that were bigger than that from last year were Ohio State, Michigan, Colorado, Oregon, talking about Colorado, the ratings draw, Colorado State, Colorado, which drew 9.3 million viewers. I think people need to remember that is like, you talk all this stuff, but like, there's a reason why if you're like in the Big 12, you kind of need them to do well, or you would think you want them to do well, because who else is bringing in 9 million viewers for a game against Colorado State? But that was when they were still on the upswing, and then it started to go downhill shortly after that. Penn State, Ohio State, Notre Dame also drew nearly 10 million last year. So, very, very high rating, 9.35 for Texas and Michigan, and wasn't even all that competitive of a game. I think it probably would have broke 10 had that been a little bit more of a back-and-forth contest, but that's what you'd expect from, two of the not only bluiest of blue bloods, but they're two just giant schools with giant alumni bases.
I thought it would be at 10 or as close to 10 as you possibly can, but that's a great number, absolutely great number. Fox has to be they are thrilled with it, because both when you have game day and Fox Big Noon kickoff in the same place, it's a big game. It was. Texas made it into a blowout, but still 2 alphas going at it. Great numbers.
Yeah, no, that was a big get for Fox, and that's the highest rated game of the entire season. I was sitting here comparing it to last year, because that was what Sports Media Watch had noted, was that only 5 games last year drew higher, but that's the highest this year, as it surpassed USC LSU from week number 1, which had about 8.6 million viewers. So surpassed that by not quite a million, but pretty close. And I think that was a game that you're more than happy about. I mean, like, Texas is flying high right now, man. They really are. They really are.
Yep.
So that was a huge thing to also add another feather in the cap of, here's this massive audience that saw us go up to Ann Arbor and beat the junk out of the defending national champions. It is funny, though, just the disparity and the difference when you're talking about the popularity of college football and you're talking about the popularity of the NFL. So Texas, Michigan was clearly the biggest game this past weekend. And what did I just tell you? 9 point, what was it?
Or
9 point, I just had it here. 9.35 million viewers. The kickoff game for the NFL, Ravens and Chiefs, 29.2 million viewers.
Golly.
20 million more viewers for Chiefs Ravens opening kickoff than for Texas and Michigan, or just about 20 million more. So that is the power of the NFL in a nutshell, is about 20 million more people. So there you go. That is
even
that is
if
a huge
that
audience.
Michigan-Texas game was competitive and it was a night, they might have gotten another million or two. The NFL is just stupid undefeated. I mean, it doesn't matter what they do, who they do. You could get 29. They could just play anybody, like Vikings against the Falcons on a Sunday at noon, and it's going to be a big number. It's just who they are.
Yeah, they're dominant, and it's ridiculous, but not surprised. 29 million.
Yeah, it was the most watched for a lot of networks. I think that's just kind of the go-to now, is like every year is the most watched it feels like. But yeah, that was just a small comparison. You also had a lot of viewers for that one compared to last year. But huge numbers for the NFL. All right. Meanwhile, I'll get a little bit further into that when we got more of a scope on the games, but I think that's still kind of lagging behind a little bit in terms of like updates on websites. So I think Thursday is going to be more of the like, hey, here were the top 5 games. But we'll see how that starts to get divvied out over the course of the next few weeks. Just a couple more stories here, as we discussed quite a bit, but the Texas Rangers are adding top pitching prospect Kumar Rocker to their roster, as he is going to make his big league debut on Thursday night against the Mariners. The former Vandy pitcher, of course, has been around in the minor leagues the past couple of years for the Rangers. And this was mentioned on Monday as they're getting ready to take on the Diamondbacks in a 4-game series, or in a series before they play the Mariners for 4. And that's the series in which Kumar Rocker will make his debut. But he's had, according to ESPN, 1.96 ERA in 10 games with 3 different affiliates since July 5th. He had Tommy John surgery a year ago, so this is a big comeback in that way as well. But did really well in his rehab starts. Has been just progressing very nicely as a former number 3 overall pick. And I remember watching a lot of him when he was at Vandy when the College World Series was going on, and he was like the star of the show. So here he is. He's made his way up, and he's about to make his debut on Thursday night.
Yeah, I'm excited for this for Rangers fans. Look, I think next year there's a very real chance that the rotation is DeGrom, Scherzer, Leiter, Rocker, Tyler Mahle. I mean, that's you got to get a lefty in there somewhere. But Kumar Rocker he's got special stuff.
Well, didn't he have Tommy John pretty quickly, or he was already injured when they
mentioned that last year.
Yeah.
So it's been a little bit since he's pitched, but he's been. I think the Rangers were like, well, we'll see where he is in the minors, and then we'll get him to spring training and see. Most of the projections I saw him up for 2026 and not 2025. I think if it continues to progress in this path, he and Jack Leiter will be in the rotation to start the season next year.
Yeah, very well could be. So that is exciting, and it hasn't been a very exciting year for Rangers fans, but hey, you won the World Series last year, so I am not complaining. I already said this is kind of a mulligan year, and I'm not going to trip out on whatever they do if they miss the playoffs, which they're going to miss the playoffs, but I'm not sweating it, and we'll see if that can inject a little bit of excitement and carry them over into the offseason, but definitely looking forward to seeing Kumar Rocker make his major league debut. Meanwhile, I just mentioned the NFL rating, like in comparison to the college football big game of the week with Michigan and Texas. But I should also mention the Cowboys game because that transitions me into another thing I want to talk about. But the Cowboys and Browns game, 23.8 million viewers for that one. So that eclipsed the Texas-Michigan game by like 16 million people. But it was also the debut of Tom Brady in the broadcast booth. And I just was curious what you guys thought about that. It was the most watched week 1 Fox telecast since 2020. As I mentioned, 23.8. That was up nearly 50% from a year ago. Most watched telecast of any kind on Fox since the NFC Championship. That's all PR stuff. But that was the Brady cast for you in the Cowboys game. And what'd y'all think of Tom Brady, the color commentator?
Paul wasn't impressed.
I mean, he's better than most their first time out of the gate. He needs more emotion, I think. I mean, he was kind of bland, robotic a little bit, but he knows everything. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But he's got to learn off that. Now, what I do think is evident is that Greg Olsen is very good, and he replaced Greg Olsen, and Olsen and Burkhardt were really good in the booth together. So Burkhardt's going to have a little maybe time before Brady gets that kind of, and he may never have the energy. I mean, heck, Burkhardt or Olsen is the guy who we found out on the U Part 2 documentary that they used to call him Big Dirty Greg with a third leg, and he did rap songs. That's never something that anybody said about Tom Brady, as far as like his persona. Yeah. He's all business. And that was what it was like on the broadcast. I'm not like, throwing the baby out with the bathwater. In fact, I enjoyed him more than many broadcasters that have been in the league for a long time. It was very clearly his first.
Well, it's his first time out.
Yeah.
I thought he was, a little not indecisive, but he can be. Listen, they'll be coaching him up all throughout the week. He'll coach himself up, but it was somewhat generic, and I can see why. But I thought that he brought up a couple of points. I thought he got more familiar as the game went on. But to try to replace Greg Olsen, which is like trying to replace, I'm not trying to say Pat Summerall or John Madden, but Greg Olsen was great. And so I think Brady will be fine. He might get, if he doesn't like it, he'll just go owned what is the team he could own, like Denver or the Raiders or
Raiders.
whatever, and then he can't broadcast anything. So
Yeah,
it'd be his out.
Trying to be ownership of the Raiders is what he's doing, and yeah, we'll see. I thought it was fine for a first debut. Now he is getting his own fair share of criticism, but not as much as I've seen in regards to Colt McCoy making his broadcast debut, which was during the Colorado and Nebraska game. I've seen multiple articles of just like, I guess, posting tweets of what, critics were out there saying. I didn't look into that too much. I had my own opinion. I didn't really need to see anybody else's. I thought he needed a little more oomph to him than what he had. That was my main thing, was he just sounded too at home, like just talking to his kids or something. It's like, no, you need a little more bass in your voice, that kind of a deal. And other than that, it just, it didn't sound like it really fit, but it was also he's getting his feet wet as well. So I don't know. You watched the game. You watched the game. What did y'all think?
And I'm not I really do watch a lot now with the sound down, only because I might be doing something else while watching that game. I did watch it. I thought he was a little vanilla again early on. First time. He's just been retired for like less than a month.
Yeah.
This is me. He has a twang. He has that Texas accent. And I'm not saying that's bad, but it's better when you are neutral. It's better if everyone thinks you're from St. Louis or Kansas City. He cannot be someone he's not. But I do think that he probably needed a little more oomph in his voice, and I think then the twang along with that, that's a twang, the accent also affected it.
It's almost worse when it's just he has a slight twang. I mean, he's not a guy who's like, dang, this is a hell of a player here. I mean, like a deep twang. But sometimes I think if you're like either way, like I think about Jerry Remy, who did the Red Sox forever, had this really thick Boston accent. And so he just leaned into it because he couldn't get out of it. So it makes it better. But if it was like a little sliver of a twang or an accent or a whatever, then sometimes maybe it makes it worse. I don't think I'm surprised that they start people out in the booth and not in the studio. Like it seems like sometimes they do it in reverse. I would rather see Colt in the studio where you get comfortable with people, show his knowledge, then move him to the booth. Because I think that's a little bit of an easier transition than let's throw him right out to the booth. Because I do think that a lot of people don't understand how hectic calling a game is. Even though TV's slightly easier than radio because you can say less because of the pictures. But even still, it's a very hectic thing that you have to do and prepare for. And so I think that I wish they would put people in the studio before they threw them out there in the booth.
It's also a pretty good game to start with.
It's a big game.
I mean, I don't know if he did a game last week, the week before. I'm sure he did, but that's a big game for him to get into. And so there's going to be a lot more eyeballs to critique. We know he's an incredible football player, knows the game, but communicating that sometimes from a former player's perspective, X's and O's is fine. But also being able to jump into it is something like Emmitt Smith. Emmitt Smith struggled. We know he knows football, but as a broadcaster, even in the studio, it just was difficult for Emmitt.
Well, you know what's funny is he's actually a lot better at that stuff now when I see him do interviews and talk about things. Like now he needs to go do it, but right after he wasn't ready.
Yeah, he had his chance though. That's one of those things. His chance was there because he's Emmitt Smith. And Colt McCoy, good luck to him. He will be listen, he's being coached up like right now, I'm sure. And coach himself up because he's that sharp of a young man.
All right. No, that was his first broadcast. That was his debut. That was the big deal about it.
That's a mistake.
So,
that's a mistake.
Yeah, that was his first go around. So we're seeing some new media personalities sprinkled across football, both pro and college this year, and we'll continue to talk about that. But there's a few things off the radar.
All right, Craig. Thank you very much for that. $29 million. And you're putting Texas and Michigan together, and it's $9.3 million. That's just crazy. Absolutely crazy. All right, when we come back, Troy Calhoun, Air Force Academy football coach. And we don't talk a lot about his team, although we do get into that, about just being he's a former Academy graduate, played there as a freshman, played on a team that was 12-1, served our country, now coaches there. What does all that mean? That's next with Air Force Academy Falcons football coach Troy Calhoun, and this is 365 Sports. Pioneer Still and Pipe. 1943, they opened their doors. 2022, at the end of the year, they opened up their new doors with a brand new facility on Loop 340 and Highway 6 just east of 35 in Waco. Pipe, steel, metal. You want to build something? Go there. You want to build something and need help? Go there. Contact them online, pioneerboys.com. They've been doing this since 1943. And now their facility, they have more product than ever. They have like an extra 1,000, I guess you could say, pieces or product in their showroom that's just 2,500 square foot showroom. And then, of course, on top of that, you're talking about loading up pipe, steel, and metal, heavy equipment, and whatever else they have, which is a lot, to build something commercial or real estate. They now have even more space, more bays, better efficiency, and loading up whatever you're going to use to haul that product to wherever the construction site might be. 1943, they opened up their doors. 2022, they closed those doors, but opened up this massive complex on Loop 340, Highway 6, pioneerboys.com.
When it comes to me and my money, I know the way it should be. I need a partner I can count on. That's Genco and me. Genco is my credit union. They're always there for me. They're people I trust. They treat me like family. My money, my future, my credit union. Genco.
Automatic Chef is your local vending, office coffee, and micro market provider, delivering outstanding service to break rooms all over Central Texas for over 50 years. Automatic Chef brings the best products to your location at the best prices. With hundreds of choices in fresh food, coffee, snacks, and drinks, let Automatic Chef tailor a break room solution to your needs. Make break time great again with Automatic Chef. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchef.com.
Bambi SQ, what is the number one reason or two or three reasons, Bambi, that people should contact House of Travel?
As a travel agency local here in Waco, we can take care of all your bookings, your payments, answer your questions, help you when there are issues or problems, things that may come up that you don't know what to do or how to fix them. People don't realize we don't charge a fee for what we do. It doesn't cost you extra to use a travel agent. We're just here. We get paid by the tour companies and the cruise lines to represent them. But you have an expert on your side that's here and local, and you have a name and a face to put together to help you with anything that you may need. Give us a call. We can price things for you. We can help you answer questions. We can make it simple, easy, and one stop.
Your knowledge of all the years you've done this and then spit it back to them or give them options?
Helps us to kind of know a date range, a budget, what your goals are and what you want to see and do on your vacation. And then that helps us to know what to look for, and we can narrow down and help you make the best choices for your vacation so you get the best value. You get exactly what you were hoping for, and making sure that it's taken care of with a carefree, easy, simple for you type vacation. I've been doing this for over 40 years. Every day I learn something new. I experience new situations and things that I can help take care of for people, whether it's just making sure you get the best deals and find the best vacations, or whether it's to solve that problem, like you've got a flight that's being canceled and don't know what to do. There's weather coming up. Should I cancel my trip next week because of the hurricane? Those are things that we take care of and you don't have to worry about. You've got somebody that you can rely on that you know is an expert, knows what we're doing, have been doing this for a long time, so that you're not questioning, okay, does the person on the other end of the phone really understand what I'm asking or know how to find those deals? You've got an expert, and we are here to take care of that.
For more information, go to houseoftravelwaco.com. Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. Don Humidor in the Townwood Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Want to send a message to the show? Jump in the Rudy's Country Store and Barbecue chat room.
Force Academy football coach Troy Calhoun joins us. 365 Sports, Baylor, and Air Force coming up. The Falcons and the Bears on Saturday evening at McLean Stadium. Coach, thank you very much for your time. How much of what you learned as someone who was in the academy, and then, of course, under Fisher DeBerry and elsewhere, but how much did you learn as someone in that institution on what it means to play for Air Force Academy?
You know, David, an immense amount, right? I mean, you're immersed in it every single day while you attend the United States Air Force Academy, and have you're fully invested when it comes to the character part of it, the leadership growth, certainly academically, and yet at the same time want to try to play solid competitive football too.
When you look at the mission of someone, my father, Paul Catalina, who's one of our co-hosts, his father was U.S. Army. My dad was Naval Academy, but he spent most of his career as a lieutenant colonel, eventually retired in the Air Force. What is the mission, and how much does that carry over to the players who you coach and how they feel about it?
David, it's every single day, you know, unequivocally the purpose of the United States Air Force Academy, and that is to develop leaders of character that are prepared to go out and serve well on active duty, and beyond that, though, too, whether it's in their, you know, within their communities or certainly for our country, both, you know, while wearing the uniform and as a civilian.
Troy Calhoun, head coach at Air Force, with us. They play Baylor on Saturday night. So you started out 1-1. I know San Jose State was the most recent win. How long do you let a win or a loss before you clear it for the next game?
You know, you usually give yourself about 12 hours. And I say that in the sense that what you do want to do is there's so many things that you learn from a previous game, and you want to be able to share that with your coaches and with your players, just to learn from past experiences, and then you have to move forward thereafter.
What was the best advice besides everything that Fisher DeBerry gave to you or taught you?
You know, more than anything else, you got to go full throttle every single day. And you realize how fortunate you are to be alongside young men, young women that chose to come to the United States Air Force Academy. Certainly not, and it wasn't because it was easy. They came because there was something in their heart, in their soul, where they said, you know, I want to serve. I want to give to my country.
How much do you think the bowl game in Fort Worth plays at all into this week with Baylor? You spanked them really well. By the way, that was a freezing night, as you know, up at Amon Carter. Does anything at all come from that game either way?
A little bit, perhaps, David, from the standpoint that personnel-wise, probably more for Baylor's sake, because they had about 10, 12 guys that played double-digit snaps in that game where we only had one. Yet, by and large, I mean, boy, especially with the kind of turnover there is in this day and age in college football, you look at it, neither one of their coordinators from the 22 season is currently there. The number of new guys that they have on their team, certainly a quarterback, you know, the acquisitions that have occurred via the portal route. So there's a lot there where there are no resemblances too.
You, of course, get some cold weather in Colorado Springs and places you've played up in the north and northwest and around the country, Air Force, Army, Navy games as well. Can you put that game as far as the weather with the wind chill in perspective in your career and how cold it was?
It was legendary. You know, I think at some point, someone told me at one point it was like 15 degrees with a wind chill of -20.
Yeah.
I hope we never experience anything like that again in terms of the climate yet. Whether it's really warm, really cold, whatever it may be, we are grateful for the chance to play college football. And I think by and large, especially when you're a cadet at the United States Air Force Academy, you know, there's so many other demands that you have. You're taking 18 or 21 semester hours, 2 levels of calculus, aeronautical engineering, astronautical engineering. You have all your military and your squadron obligations. That in a lot of ways, you know, when you go out to practice, even if it's only for an hour and 20 minutes, that might be the best part of your day.
It might be. How did you juggle that as someone that was there and as a student and a part of serving your country?
Well, David, like my own children, my son and my daughter remind me frequently, it must have been a lot easier then, especially academically. And I mean, just more than anything else, I think the structure, the organization, your peers, you learn really to lean on each other. That's part of building the kind of teamwork and trust that's a necessity when you are on active duty. Again, the character part of it is huge.
You were on active duty. What was that like for you? And then you got back into coaching, came back to the Air Force Academy. I think as a GA, recruiting coordinator, then Ohio and on to elsewhere. What was that like being a part of active duty compared to when you're on campus as you're getting towards your graduation in Colorado Springs?
Well, it's real. It's sobering. I worked in a field where it was, if the president had to send in an EAM, that's an emergency action message, that means launch, whether it's the old ICBMs or, the short-range missiles within theater in Europe or from the subs. I mean, it just kept you very, very alert. You hope to know when. It's kind of like when you go over here and we visit NORAD. You hope that those items are never brought into play for real, but you realize it's a must just for the sake of deterrence.
Troy Calhoun, again, the head coach at Air Force with us. The Falcons and Bears play Baylor at McLean Stadium on Saturday evening. You are wearing those unbelievable uniforms. Baylor's wearing black ops uniforms. It's going to be an amazing scene. Your thoughts about just the game itself?
You know, David, I'll say this. I mean, just you have two fantastic institutions. The quality of school, the character part of it when you're talking about Baylor and the United States Air Force Academy, and even more so, the people, the young men and young women that go to each one of the institutions, just their makeup, the commitment when it comes to the character growth by both schools, and then obviously they are exceptional in sports. I mean, it is impressive. And how many different sports Baylor is so strong, not only within the Big 12, but nationally too.
What are your thoughts about where we are with college football, with all the changes, NIL, transfer portal? The academies, of course, have been able to stay to who you are. There's maybe 1 or 5 other schools that have not really done much of that. People say that if you don't do it, you suffer. But you guys have your values. What are your thoughts about where we are, Troy, right now when it comes to college football?
Well, I'll say this. We can never lose sight of the educational component to help a young person grow as a human being, and truly to embed some qualities, whether they're skills or an educational foundation or some leadership aptitude too that they carry forth when they're done playing sports. And I think we're all as committed as we've ever been to help young people that way. When it comes to NIL, David, I am a complete proponent and in favor of NIL. I mean, we live in the United States of America.
Mm-hmm.
If there's value that you do have, we see it with coaches that might move from one job to another. We see it in about any line of work, any industry. And so I think a player should be able to do that too. As we look forward, at some point, inevitably, there's going to be some kind of contractual agreement that's even more binding. I think as somebody that's a performer, a producer, an employee, if you will, and it'll be interesting to see just how soon we get to that, get to that point in time.
When you arrived on campus as a part of being accepted into the academy and you played as a freshman, did you have any idea that you could? And what was it like when you made the team as a freshman and a team that I think maybe went 11 or 12-1 that year? That's amazing.
Oh, David, I'll tell you frankly, I think I fell into a big old bed of 4-leaf clovers. I mean, to be real, we had some really, really talented seniors that were extremely experienced. And it was at a point in time, and we're going back here now just a couple of years, it was in the 1980s, where I think, that sports, especially the connection when it came to being able to serve on active duty, just the vibe around the United States Air Force Academy, just during those years, how really every single person was trained to have a mindset of a fighter pilot, even if you didn't end up becoming a fighter pilot.
Mm-hmm.
And they were great, great years, and yet still those experiences, that kind of heritage that you still pull and draw from.
You spent time in the NFL with the Broncos and also with the Texans, and then all of a sudden your alma mater head coaching job becomes open when Fisher DeBerry decided to retire. What was that like? How quickly did they either contact you or you them, and how quickly did you want that job? And what does it mean to you when you got the job?
I'll tell you this, when I had no idea it was going to occur. And then when I was first asked by the administration, I said, absolutely no way. And we loved living in Houston, being a part of the Texans, worked for incredible people with, alongside, to get a chance to work for Gary Kubiak as a head coach there in Houston. We had an ownership group at that time with the McNair family that was all in. They were committed to try to truly build a franchise that was very, very young. And my wife's from Pearland, Texas, there on the south side of Houston. Yeah. So I thought not a chance in the world. And then about 48 hours, I was like, that's the Air Force Academy. Those young men, young women have made a commitment to serve. And I was like, how do you say no when somebody's asking you to come back to help guide and mentor our young people that want to go fight for our freedoms?
What does it mean to coach them?
Well, it's much bigger than just coaching a sport. And you're trying to embed or help them further, embed a set of values that help them not only when they're a second lieutenant, when they're commissioned as an officer in the United States Air Force or the Space Force, because we do feed both branches of service. And I think where you find it most moving is you can recall interacting with that young person when they were 17, in their senior year of high school or late in the junior year, and they really had no idea about the Air Force Academy, had no idea about the Air Force. And a lot of times, a lot of circumstances, neither did the parents. And I don't say that in the demeaning way, because I completely identify with that. I had no idea about the Air Force Academy when I was a junior in high school, and yet just see to see the transformation that occurs. They plod their way, because that's through the rigors of the Air Force Academy. They're 22, they graduate, and they go serve, and lo and behold, there they are 4 or 5 years later, and they're flying F-35s, or they're a doctor in the Air Force, or they've gone to law school, or they're in special ops. And it's overwhelming to see the growth and the perspective and, the will that they have to make our country a stronger place to live.
Troy Calhoun, Air Force football coach. Just a couple more questions. Thank you so much for your time. When you were in the lumber business, or as a kid in Oregon, how much did that teach you you talked about Coach DeBerry full throttle every day. How much did that help you grow up pretty quickly?
Well, I was fortunate. My dad was a teacher and a coach at the high school level. And then my mother was an emergency room nurse. And obviously in that area of the country, there were a lot of really serious accidents. I mean, truly, you look, whether it's deep sea fishing, or the lumber industry, especially then, because literally you're cutting down trees, whether it's slivers, whether it was, logs tumbling. You have to soak the logs to be able to peel the bark. And once in a while, there's just an awful, something falls in terms of a power line or something like that. And it's, well, I know we really, really get wrapped up in winning and losing a game, but there were times when my mom would come home and I thought, oh goodness, there was a tough accident that happened, obviously. And, you learn to never take life for granted, how short it truly is. And I think if anything, it was inspiring to think that, you know what, we got to make the most of each and every single day. And it made you even more committed to live in a country where we do have values. And more importantly, we have freedoms that we are able to exercise and never assume that that's automatic.
What is it about Air Force football? And you guys had a pretty big night passing the ball in that weather against Baylor and won that game going away, dominated that game. But what is it about your football program that you think might not be known?
Well, you've covered it, David. I say from the sense, you mean really? These guys, every single one of them has to be at least a 3.5 student out of high school, and we're test mandatory. They have to have over a 1,200 on the SAT, or they really are going to take 2 levels of calculus and physics and chemistry and all the engineering classes. And yeah, they are, where the respect that they have to have for their body, and yet ultimately to be able to raise their right hand and say, hey, you know what? Yeah, I'll go fight for our Constitution, and wherever I'm asked to serve, I'm all in. I just find it amazing. It's just absolutely astounding because candidly, I mean, we live in a country where less than 1% choose to serve, and yet these young men and young women, that's exactly what they're going to do for all of us, for the other 99+%.
Is it different when you play somebody else like Army and or Navy when it is compared to anyone else you play?
Every game truly is unique. Certainly when you play those two contests, and in pregame you have the march on from both sides, and you're saying, lo and behold, look at these 19 and 20-year-olds, and who knows where they're going to be globally in the next 3 or 4 years. I don't think anybody can forecast over the next 12 months what may happen, whether it's, in the Middle East, whether it's somewhere in the Korean Peninsula, whether it's close to the Formosa Straits or with China, or even in Eastern Europe. And yet in their own way, if we say that's where you're going, they've already said, I've signed up.
Yeah. And as a military brat, I loved every day I was a part of it. We went, born in Nebraska, moved to Guam, went to Arizona, Luke Air Force Base, then the Pentagon, to San Antonio at Randolph, and then Japan, and then back to Randolph. And so I didn't serve. My father did. Paul's father did. Craig's grandfather did. But I love listening to you talk about it. Coach, thank you so much for your time. Look forward, and hopefully if I get a chance, I'll shake your hand without getting in your way on Saturday evening at McLean Stadium.
Oh, I'd love that, David. Yeah, and I'll tell you, as you went through that roll call right there, I thought, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Did he live at Anderson Air Force Base in Guam? Did he live
where
they had offered in Omaha?
Yeah, I was.
As you peel through each one of those,
yeah.
I think, how incredible.
I was actually born at Offutt Air Force Base, then moved to Anderson Air Force Base. I was like 1, and we went over, I think, even on like an aircraft carrier or something. I don't know what it was. And then I said, Luke, again, Pentagon, Randolph, and then when I was at Yokota, eventually. They put a lot of consolidated some Air Force bases there, an unbelievable Air Force base in Japan. Troy, Coach Calhoun, thank you so much for what you represent and also for giving us this time.
Absolutely, David. Thank you. Because, the other part of it, you just brought to light the family sacrifices that are made by our service members. When you're deployed, and whether it's mom or dad, and they're alone raising the kids, and for the challenges that they have, because it truly is a family commitment. So thank you to you and your family too.
Thank you very much. Troy Calhoun, Air Force, United States Air Force Academy Falcons head football coach, with us on 365 Sports.
Hi, I'm Dana Hassel, President and CEO of American Bank. Waco is a great place for business, and for more than 70 years, American Bank has been the bank for business. We continue to invest in our growing community with state-of-the-art branches conveniently located to serve you within minutes. Our experienced bankers, lenders, and and decision makers work directly with business owners like you every day, providing tailored solutions, timely answers, and local insights face to face. Schedule a meeting with one of our bankers today and find out what makes American Bank the bank for your business. Member FDIC.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions IT success guaranteed.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
He is to humanity what bacon is to breakfast. He is allowed to use his cell phone on an airplane. He is Cesar Leal of Leal's Mexican Restaurant.
I don't always eat Mexican food, but when I do, I prefer Leal.
Leal's Mexican Restaurant, 9000 Panther Drive in Woodway, 254-772-8140.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Brad Wilson. Investing is time and experience back to you and your money during today's changing times. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
This 5 o'clock hour, including thanks to Troy Calhoun of Air Force for joining us today, but also the Hall of Famer himself and John McClain. The first weekend of the NFL season started with that unbelievable game, Kansas City, and their win against Baltimore. And then last night, Monday Night Football, somewhat of a dud, but the 49ers flexed their muscles even without Christian McCaffrey. John, thank you for your time. Texans took care of their business. What were, I mean, there's probably 20, but 2 to 3 things from the opening weekend that caught your attention the most?
Well, I'm sure of 2 things after last weekend of football. The Longhorns are going to win the championship, and the Cowboys are going to win the Super Bowl without a doubt.
Well, there we go. Why even play the games?
And why even play the game? And truthfully, when their fans get crushed, their hopes get crushed in the playoffs, it'll be even better. But it was impressive what Texas did to Michigan and what the Cowboys did to the Browns. Dak Prescott got $1 million more guaranteed than DeShaun Watson, which means Watson no longer has the greatest contract in history, and they boot him off the field. And I think it's pretty apparent Mike Zimmer's defense is going to be physical and it's going to be good. And the happiest player besides Dak Prescott had to be Micah Parsons, because, you know, he thought, okay, everybody thought CD was not going to get paid, and he did. And everybody was speculating Dak would be gone, and he's not. So that means no matter what they put me through, next year I'm going to get paid too. Because as we've talked about a lot, Jerry Jones has not lost a player he wanted to keep because of money. He has a strange way of negotiating. He could have had him cheaper before, but it's almost like he likes the attention from paying those big contracts and having those long contract controversies, because it just gets him more in the limelight. But the bottom line is the Cowboys look great.
John, you covered DeShaun Watson for the entirety of his NFL career, really, especially when he was there in Houston. I'm curious about, I know he's had the injuries and he's had the controversies, and now he has another one, a lawsuit coming up, which is pending. But that year that he didn't play because he was mad at the Texans, how much do you think that hurt his overall football skill level? Because he wasn't hurt, he was just not playing.
Yeah, he wasn't playing because they didn't play him. It had nothing to do with what he wanted to do, and because they knew they were going to trade him. They thought they were going to trade him to Miami. So he went out and worked out on his own after practice, and then he would go home. In 2020, the Texans were terrible. The season, Bill O'Brien was fired after an 0-4 start, but he was great. Threw for almost 5,000 yards, had over 30 touchdown passes, 5 touchdowns rushing, led the league in rating. He was also number 1 in yards per attempt. And then it all went downhill. Then all those lawsuits kept coming out. And that was such a big deal for him. Then he had to sit out that season. And then they finally traded him. And he is not the same quarterback. When I watch him, that is not the DeShaun Watson I saw here. I never thought he would have great stats again because he's playing in one of the 2 windiest stadiums in the NFL, along with Soldier Field. But I thought he would still be good. If he's not good, he's terrible. And the fans booed him like crazy. Now we know why Joe Flacco wasn't brought back, because the fans would have been chanting, "We want Joe. We want Joe." And maybe it's next time they play and he's terrible, it'll be, "We want Jameis." But right now, the quarterback I see bears no resemblance to the quarterback I saw in Houston.
John, it seems like Joe Mixon's making fast friends in Houston. That was a nice debut for him.
Sure was. Texans, in fact, I'm writing a column right now for HoustonTexans.com. The Texans have only been in the top 5 in their 23-year history in rushing. They were 5th in Bill O'Brien's first year, and they were 2nd in 2011 under Gary Kubiak when they won their first division title in playoff game. Arian Foster was the leading rusher each time. Now, Mixon, 30 carries, only the second time in his career he's had that 159 yards, second best of his career. But what was most impressive was the run blocking. The offensive line struggled in pass protection. C.J. Stroud had 2 touchdown passes to Stephon Diggs, no turnovers. But that running game, they lead the NFL in rushing by a long shot. And Mixon, man, he fit this system. And to think they got him for a 7th-round pick, he turned 28 in July. He's obviously not going to carry the ball 30 times. And you know the Bears had to go back to the drawing board. Whoa. Instead of us preparing everything for Stroud to be throwing it to his receivers and tight ends, we got to think about that running game. So fans will be able to see it all Sunday night on NBC. And when the Bears beat the Titans, because Tennessee quarterback Will Levis committed one of the dumbest plays in the history of the NFL, in which he was going down to be sacked, and he tried to push it, shot put it with 2 hands to the sideline right to a cornerback of the Bears who returned it for the winning touchdown. He just gave them the game. NBC was happy because now they can say they have the unbeaten Bears with Caleb Williams and the unbeaten Texans.
What were your
with
thoughts?
C.J. Stroud.
Yeah. What were your thoughts about Caleb Williams? He didn't throw for a lot, but he won. They found a way to win the game. I know you mentioned there was the gift, but just his overall opening game.
Well, they did, and he had nothing to do with it. He didn't even throw for 100 yards. He overthrew some wide open receivers, but that's what happened to rookie quarterbacks. People talk about there's only been 4 number 1 overall picks win their debuts, and this was the first one since David Carr beat the Cowboys in 2002. And before that, it was Jim Plunkett in 71, John Elway in 83, and oh gosh, I can't even remember who the other one was, and Elway was terrible in his debut, and Williams was too. And I watched all Hard Knocks, and he likes to make a lot of plays off schedule. And coaches don't like that, but if that's the way you play best, you got to incorporate that into the system. So I can't wait to see how they do. And if the Titans hadn't committed by giving them a special teams touchdown and a defensive touchdown, they wouldn't have blown a 17-0 lead.
John, there is a little bit of controversy with the 49ers and Christian McCaffrey's injury because Jordan Mason last night said he found out he was going to start on Friday. Kyle Shanahan kind of played that off. Is this a big deal? Do you think this is legit duping of the injury report system, or is too much being made out of this?
Absolutely, it's duping, and every team's going to want the 49ers fined, and they'll be happy to pay that fine. But if your guy knows on Friday he's not going to play, you change questionable to doubtful. So I look for them to be fined, and it just goes to show that offense with Kyle Shanahan calling the plays is great. The outside zone scheme running game works so well for different players, like Joe Mixon coming to play with it in Houston. And I tell you what, it would have changed a lot of betting. And all those people that took the 49ers and thought, oh, my God, we're going to lose because of McCaffrey, they're happy as can be. So 49ers do a great job in regular season. They win. They're good for a playoff game, but Kyle Shanahan needs to win a Super Bowl before he's going to get the recognition he deserves as being a great coach.
Well, it did screw me in a fantasy game last night too, because I believe Christian McCaffrey when he said he was going to play, and then I had no one to put in.
Of course you did. Of course you did.
Why would he lie to me?
Well, it's going to cost him money, not you.
Yeah.
So the 49ers, John, is that why the backup who had the big game, Nathan, is that why when he was asked in the post game about when he knew and he kind of stumbled around that because it was kind of a game that was being played?
Well, I think he is a guy that is inexperienced in that situation, and I'll guarantee you he's never going to reveal anything like that again. He got his butt chewed because of it, but it would have been a big deal. Yes, it would have been one of the biggest stories of the weekend, and the 49ers will gladly accept any kind of fine the NFL wants to levy because they beat the hell out of Aaron Rodgers and the Jets.
Yeah. What were your thoughts? I thought, in my opinion, watching probably 2/3 of the game, I thought, and understandably so because of his Achilles, that I didn't see him like completely locked in as far as physically when he threw the ball with his left leg.
I agree with you 100%. That's a serious injury. I'll tell you, it was worse. Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins hadn't played that bad since maybe middle school. He couldn't move. Next generation stats timed everything every time he moved, and it was so much slower than before he was hurt. They put him in the shotgun to protect him, but he's usually been best when he's under center playing off play action. And so that didn't help him either. But my goodness, Kirk Cousins was obviously not ready to play, and that may be an indication of why they made that shocking pick and took Michael Penix Jr. in the first round.
John, one of our listeners in the chat room, Kyle Visser, said, hey, tell John McClain y'all spoke to Troy Calhoun. He'll have a story or two. We recorded Troy Calhoun and played it before your segment, the Air Force football coach who was with the Texans for, a year or two. You need stories about Troy Calhoun?
Troy was here 1 year, and he was in Denver. He came with Gary Kubiak. I think that Mike Shanahan told Gary he could take 2 or 3 coaches off his staff, and Troy was the first one. And Troy was his offensive coordinator, even though Gary called plays. And then after that first season, boom, Air Force called. He's been the head coach there since 2007 and done a hell of a job.
Yep, he has it. And they beat Baylor, just whipped them in that bowl game up in Fort Worth a couple of years ago.
Maybe they'll get revenge.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Better score a couple of defensive touchdowns.
All right, one more thing from you. This Friday, all throughout this week, Baylor, and you were right in the middle of it, won the Southwest Conference title, a miracle on the Brazos, the comeback against UT, and then they closed it out, winning the Southwest Conference. 50th year. 50 years, John, which makes a lot of people old. Ricky Thompson said they got like 50 or 60 former players coming back for a dinner and a party on Friday night. Where were you? What do you remember about 1974 in that season?
Well, I'm in that video that they recorded when I came up for the Joe Green luncheon. They interviewed me, and I haven't seen it. The friends have told me they used some of my stuff. I was covering the Longhorns dressing room for the Waco Tribune Herald. Dave Campbell wrote the lead. Lester Zed wrote the Bears dressing room. And at halftime, I was at the back of the press box with Lester, and so many fans were leaving. I went to Dave Campbell, and I said, Mr. Campbell, bad thing about being a sports writer is you can't leave when you know your team's beat. He said, so you think it's over, young man? I said, yes, sir, I do. He said, stranger things have happened. And I looked at Lester where Dave couldn't see me and ran my index finger around my temple like Dave was crazy and lost it. And then after I did the Longhorns dressing room, I saw Darrell Royal go into the Baylor dressing room, talk to Grant about talking to the Bears. He did. He said, we'll beat the Aggies. You take care of Rice, you'll be the Southwest Conference champions. And I told my dad that's the first time I've ever seen a Longhorn with class. And then that night when I got home and all the fans were driving around the stadium and Abner McCall and Herbert Reynolds were spending the night in their suite, my dad asked me, he said, can we go drive around the stadium once? And I'm like, oh, my God. But I had to. Took us forever to get in the line, putzing along 2 miles an hour, looking up at the fog-shrouded scoreboard. All the TVs were on like it was like a hurricane was in town or a tornado. And when we got one, my dad said, can we do it again? Then he said, can he do it again? About 2 o'clock, I heard him going.
Yeah.
So I knew it was time to go home. I wouldn't trade that memory for anything. And I was in Waco talking to Grant Tapp about it twice. And I thought it's the greatest moment in the history of Baylor football. And other than winning the national championship in basketball, men and women, maybe the greatest moment in Baylor history of any sport.
Well, and especially, and I heard this from Randy Martin told me this story. Grant Taff has brought this up too, that what was it? Who was it? Patterson was the president at the time. And I did not.
He was athletic director.
Okay. I did not know as much about that. This was something that there were legitimate talks about shutting down the football program before
Absolutely.
that. Yeah.
When Bill Bell's one of the worst coaches in history, and everybody said Baylor should fold the program. Nobody wanted to be the head coach. And then with Rudy Feldman from New Mexico, shows you how far they were dipping down, took the job for a day. Then he backed out, and they got stuck with their 10th choice, Grant Teeth, as everybody thought his name was called. And I bet you guys don't know the story about Grant going to Jack Patterson's house with Donnell. And when they were going in, Grant tracked in dog mess on his bright light blue shag carpet. Patterson didn't see it. And when they went in the other room, Donnell went and got the cleaning stuff and cleaned it all up, and Grant got the job because he was worried that that dog mess on his shag carpet might keep him from getting hired.
Oh, my Lord. Katie Rader asked us, would you please ask him about the Astrodome news? Is there anything new that I don't know about?
There's no Astrodome news I know about because they can't tear it down. They got a lot of plans they want to do for it, and it's a huge war here with the politicians and the public. Right now, everybody's worried about the building next door on Sunday Night Football.
All right, Paul, anything else for John?
Nope.
Craig? Okay, thank you very much. John, the Hall of Famer, we appreciate your time every week.
Thank you, and take 'em Bears.
John McClain, Hall of Fame columnist with us on Tuesdays, usually at around 5:30. We have still the top five, Paul Catalina. This is 365 Sports. Waco Custom Marketplace, the hometown grocery store, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. These are the specials for this week. One, before I get to that, if you tailgate, they have charcoal, they have pellet fuel, they have all the marinades and seasonings you could ever want for whatever you're going to cook, whether it's burgers, sausage, brats, whatever, brisket, tri-tip, steaks. Yes, they do. And also, if you call ahead and give them an order and go pick it up to tailgate prior to that game with Air Force on Saturday or whatever game you're going to. But they have bacon ends and pieces for $1.50. My good friend Eric Horton taught me how how to cook those, and that is a tedious process. Boneless pork butt for $2.05 a pound. Also, mahi-mahi, $14.99 a pound. I caught a bunch of those when I was in Cabo back about 10 years ago. And tuna steaks are $17.50. Select, choice, and prime and Wagyu New York strip steaks from $11.50 up to $21.50 a pound, available at Waco Custom Marketplace, your hometown grocery store, the Bauer family, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Welcome into Paul Catalina's Top 5 here on 365 Sports, presented by Texas Beef House. Go to Bid on Beef, get involved in the auctions, and use our promo code 365 Sports. They've got them going on all the time. Again, bidonbeef.com. Today, most surprising teams through a couple of weeks here on the Top 5. Number 5, Boston College. Look, Bill O'Brien was going to bring some stability and structure and all these things to Boston College eventually, but really his methods have taken hold quite early on. Not only are they now ranked, but they went to Tallahassee on Labor Day and took it to Florida State, much to my chagrin. But credit where credit's due. Bill O'Brien's doing a good job with this team. He's got a really good athletic quarterback in Thomas Castellanos. He's got a defense that's playing very fundamentally sound, and he's playing within himself. He's coaching within himself. So Boston College, early surprise. We'll see how the ACC holds up all down the line. I have a feeling that this conference is going to be chaotic, kind of like the Big 12, but Boston College gets an early wink. And we'll stay in the ACC. Syracuse, also a new coach in Fran Brown. He's brought a high-flying offense there. Kyle McCord putting up huge numbers, so much so that I saw a couple polls that has him as a Heisman candidate. You know who's not a Heisman candidate yet? Will Howard, the guy he replaced at Ohio State. Not knocking Will Howard, but my confusion over the casting out of Kyle McCord will continue for all times. It'll be one of those questions like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Or why did Kyle McCord get cast aside at Ohio State? I didn't have anything else, so I'll just throw it up there with the chicken and the egg. Don't understand how a guy who only had one loss was really only attracted to a program like Syracuse when there's probably teams that have much better pedigrees than Syracuse that could totally use him right now. I might be thinking about the team that just lost to this team, but I don't know. Again, that's my philosophical moment here. But Syracuse doing really well early on. They beat Georgia Tech, who also beat the team that this team beat. But anyway, moving on. Number 3, Illinois, beating what we thought was a good Kansas team and maybe exposing some of the problems that Jeff Grimes' offense has and maybe some of the limitations of Jalen Daniels. Look, you'll find no bigger Jalen Daniels advocate than me. I would love to have him as the quarterback on almost any college team, but maybe he's not the superstar we thought he was, and that is troubling for the Jayhawks as they go into the season. The Illini defense shut them down for most of the game and really limited what Jeff Grimes was wanting to do. They didn't really put the ball in Jalen Daniels' hands enough, and then when they did, he turned it over a couple times. So a lot of problems right now at Kansas that they've got to get fixed before they get deep into the Big 12 season. And Illinois exposed a lot of them. So props to Brett Bielema in Illinois and what's going on there. They were fired up in Champaign the other day. Number 2, Arizona State just beat an SEC team. This is a team that was as bad as you could be last year in the Big 12 and did it overcoming nothing out of the quarterback. I mean, nothing out of the quarterback, Sam Leavitt, the other day. It was all Cam Scatteraboo, but so far they're 2-0, which at this point last year they would have been thrilled to be 2-0. They would have been loved to be anything 0. But because they were so in the doldrums in a rebuilding phase, but Kenny Dillingham early on has made this team look at least intriguing, especially when you got a guy named Cam Scatteraboo. Scatteraboo. Love saying it. Scatteraboo. It's just fun to say. And number 1, USC. Now, should USC ever be on a surprising team list? Mostly they're a surprising disappointment, but Danton Lynn is the hire of the offseason. This was not a talent issue, clearly, on USC, which is something Garrett and I both said quite a bit, that it was not a talent issue. This was a scheme issue, and this was maybe a preparation issue. And Alex Grinch was clearly doing less with more, because in the first 2 weeks, now granted, one of those games was not against a world beater, but one of them was against LSU, who's got a very good offense, and USC kept it contained for the most part by what normal LSU offensive standards are, and they did very, very well. Miller Moss, just the latest in the line of really good-looking quarterbacks who play for Lincoln Riley. I think they're a factor in the Big Ten if that defense really is as good as it appears to be. They've looked really good the first 2 weeks, as where Oregon, who most people think is going to be the challenger to Ohio State, I don't know. I think USC could sneak in there. If they keep on this path, their defense is really good and their offense is really good. Might be seeing them in the championship game at the end of the year. I don't know. Just saying, let's keep an eye on the Trojans, see if Lincoln Riley can get his groove back, which he had when he was in the Big 12 for a very long time. That's going to do it for the top 5. We're wrapping it up right now.
All right, Paul, thank you very much. One final quick nugget on college football. I've had this for really almost since the weekend. This is from the College Football Campus Tour. This is Pub Sheds, Grand Valley State. These sheds are located in Tailgate Town next to Luber Stadium, a unique premium tailgating experience. The cost of these for one time is $4,000. It's $4,000 a year that includes a television, fridge, picnic table, tents, bar to stock. It's heated, so when it gets a little bit chilly, there's some of the pictures of these sheds outside of their stadium.
$600 a game.
And yeah, if they play 6 games, 7 games, 5 games, yeah.
So if you got a group of friends together, which is something like that's not too terribly bad. Now, if they do this anywhere else, like Grand Valley State can charge $4,000, what can Ohio State charge for this?
Oh, not whatever they want.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so go to the one that is the inside. Yeah, the one on the lower right. There is the inside of. It's got the tables, and then they got you can sleep people in there if you want. But they got the full. They got the kitchen sink, and outside they set up because you have tables inside for your tailgating dining table or whatever you want to put the food.
My brother-in-law, Rami, went to Grand Valley State.
Did he really?
Yeah.
All right. This is what did I see? Yes, Grand Valley State. Absolutely. All right. Thank you very much to College Football Campus Tours. That's pretty cool. Craig Smoak, thank you. Paul Catalina, Jack McKenzie, Emery Winter, Garrett Ross. Jack McKenzie has been at a media session, right? Like volleyball or something, and football too. And Emery's working on 365 Sports tonight. Tonight at 10:30 on the CW. Garrett, well done. Thank you. Thanks to our fantastic sponsors. Those of you who have been watching whether it is on the app, Sikkim 365 app, on Twitter at 365 Sports Y2, and also, of course, right here on the YouTube channel. Good night. I'm David Smoak, 365 Sports.